start the actual process for the study session. And with that, I will, we need to do another roll call. All right. Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Beck.
Here.
Vice Mayor Edwards.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Crawford.
Here.
Councilmember Finn. Councilmember Patena.
Here.
Councilmember Dutch is on the line.
Here.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We have 2 items on the agenda for today. The first will be an update from Economic Development Strategic Plan, followed by an update on the city's first completed airport feasibility study. And with that, I will turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, at the table we have Jennifer Stein, our Economic Development Director, and Mike Faust, Deputy City Manager, and they're going to present on a strategic plan that lists out the goals to attract new businesses and amenities and create new jobs to help Peoria grow and thrive economically. So with that, I don't know if I'm giving it to Mike or Jen. You guys will figure that out. Take it away.
Mayor and Council, thanks for this opportunity. Jen's going to lead the conversation tonight. I'll be here to answer any questions or participate in questions, but Jen and team have done a fantastic job of taking one of the 3 pillars or tenets of the council priorities of economic development and distilling that down into some key metrics and key goals. So Jen, if you don't mind, walk us through your 5-year plan.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council. We're really excited to share an overview of our 5-year economic development strategic plan. This definitely sets the framework and a really solid roadmap for the next 5 years. Recognizing that economic development is a priority, it's an honor to execute your vision and share the goals and some of the strategies today. We have created a plan that is in alignment with our workforce, infrastructure, and all the different assets we have to deliver high-quality jobs. We are all in this together, and as I've said before, economic development is a team sport. So everyone sitting around this table, everyone out there, everyone's an ambassador, everyone's helping generate leads, bring leads, to deliver amenities and opportunities that our residents and business community deserves and desires. Everything we say, it either helps or hinders us, and so we really work hard diligently to get our story out there and our message every single day. The real work happens through our strategic partnerships, and as you can tell, our team, even though we're small but mighty, is very passionate and dedicated. As you can see, dedication will take you far as we continue on through our mission. Quality of life is really a driving force here. The work, live, and play is what we strive and desire when we're approaching and pursuing different opportunities to attract and recruit into the city. The mission of the Peoria's Economic Development Services Department is to cultivate a diverse and resilient economy by fostering generational growth, innovation, and prosperity for Peoria residents. We have a lot to be proud of. We definitely have a great story to share. I just kind of, why residents and businesses choose Peoria as their home. All day long we're selling Peoria, and I just have to tell you a really funny story. A lot of times my pitch begins with, Peoria is the best city on earth. And I have said that over and over so many times that my son actually thought I worked for Disneyland. For a long time, until I took him to work because he begged me to come to Disneyland because, we're the best and happiest place on earth here in Peoria. And he was really disappointed to find out that he wasn't going to see Space Mountain, but instead Sunrise Mountain. Anyways, our vision. We have a shared vision. Thanks. Peoria's Economic Development Services Department attracts, builds, and retains compelling and sustainable business within our community. Again, this really comes back to creating jobs and generating new economic or new revenue through increased sales tax. But first, before we can ever really delve into a strategic plan effectively, we have to look at some of the challenges that we're trying to solve. And so the 2 big ones that we are problem solving for the next few years is we want to reduce the percentage of Peoria's workforce that commutes to other cities. A lot of out-commuting occurs, as you know. We also want to increase residential spending within Peoria's boundaries, keep the money inside the city. rather than people we hear are traveling 20, 30 minutes to other parts of the valley. We want to bring those amenities and restaurant and retail experiences here. A great example in why they're reducing the workforce percentage and increasing spending dollars, there's a symbiotic relationship because, for example, just in the last year, Caliber, which is just down the street, has 420,000 square feet of industrial space, which is going to bring a lot of jobs into that area. In addition, you're seeing about 1,000 multifamily units surrounding this industrial product, which we are excited to have existing product. But for a while, sometimes the leads that we generate in our pipeline, we don't have the facility or the inventories to accommodate. So we have Caliber coming online. It's amazing. Then you see downtown has additional restaurants and redevelopment and revitalization through some of the concepts we just talked about recently that council approved. So you're starting to see this ecosystem form. As we start to bring in these jobs, it starts to yield other ancillary benefits, the restaurant, the retail, the rooftops. Okay, so target metrics. That picture of all the cars on the freeway going east in the morning really says it all, right? I mean, quality of life is not sitting in your car for however many minutes, unless you really love podcasts or books on tape, I don't know. But really, people they want to be able to enjoy their family and life outside of the vehicle. So 83% of Peoria's workforce is leaving the city. We have a goal of creating 3,000 jobs, which would take that workforce percentage down to 73%. Okay. And by the way, if we can take all those cars onto the other side in the next 5 years, I think everybody can do a mic drop. That's huge. The second is we fall consistently among the lowest gross sales per capita cities in Arizona. And this is something that we can change by attracting new retail, new restaurants, big mixed use. Example, Trailhead. That's another great example of a new shopping, restaurants, experiential opportunities. This goal is increasing citywide gross sales revenue by $450 million over the next 5 years. And this is actually over our current projected growth. So this is an addition. This is just kind of like on top of everything that we're setting the $450 million, which equates to $10 million in sales tax revenue additional. So at a macro level, because I don't know if you want to be here for 4 hours listening to my tactics and fun, creative methods of generating our pipeline, we're just going to talk really quick about the 4 goals. Because the implementation plan, which I'm happy to share with you when we finalize, does outline all the different tactics and activities and marketing efforts and campaigns that we are going to pursue. But number 1 is to create more jobs. Number 2 is to increase gross sales tax revenue. The third goal is address workforce gaps. And number 4 is enable tourism growth. So I'm a native, and growing up here, we learned about the 5 C's of Arizona. I don't know if you all remember the 5 C's. Well, I have created the 5 P's of Peoria, and that really definitely helps with our pitching process. And that kind of concurs with how we're going to fulfill the goals. Number 1 is people. We have a very talented workforce in the city of Peoria. Definitely found out through analysis when TSMC made an announcement a few years ago how strong our workforce was. The number 1, when you look at a site selection process and you're talking to site selectors and brokers and developers, the number 1 ask or consideration is workforce. So we are fortunate we have a very good workforce. Number 2, the second P, is product. In the last year, we have worked with developers and landowners to build nearly 1 million square feet of industrial space, to allow us the opportunity to attract, again, more leads coming in our advanced industries. Number 3 is price point. Our ground is more reasonable than California, so it's definitely fun to pitch California. But also, if you compare us to other parts of the valley, potentially East Valley or even the Deer Valley area, our ground is a little bit more reasonable, and it's still in close proximity and shares the same trade area. Number 4 is planning. We have solid infrastructure, and that's something to be really proud of. We have great utilities, great roadways. This is a big testament to planning and engineering. We have a really close relationship with those departments. In fact, we can't advance projects successfully without their support. And number 5 is population growth. We are definitely seeing a significant growth, and that is definitely helping drive our economic development efforts. So the target sectors, hold on one second. Oops, I skipped. Okay, so we want to focus our energy on these target sectors: aerospace, aviation, corporate regional headquarters, EV, semiconductor, microelectronics, and suppliers and technology and software. This aligns with our workforce really well, and it also is in conjunction with our regional partners, GPEC and ACA, and what they're bringing and seeing land in our state. So we have these particular sectors. We also, in addition, have other companies that we bring in and talk to, but this really helps us for our strongest opportunity for growth.
Jen, if I could just add, before you leave that one, Jen had given you each a copy of a bound plan, and in the back, it's not like these target sectors were just randomly chosen. So Jen has, she's working through the presentation. It seems like folks want to talk about the next topic. She's got the supporting data as to why those target sectors were there. So a deep analysis was done to determine why those 5 sectors are appropriate, why they're the right ones to go after. And as she works through each of these respective goals, the individual supporting data is housed in the back of the packet you've been provided. Right.
Thank you.
Comments? Comments? Council?
All right, keep going.
Council members?
All right.
Councilmember Dunn? Any question? All right, I'd like to make a comment just based on.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to make a comment on this. So you were recently recognized for your efforts across the state, and I want to thank you for that. I think that the aspects of how hard you've been working personally, not only for the city of Peoria, but also making an impact on the state, and actually attracting other people to the state as far as businesses. I saw what you did from the Super Bowl on. It's awesome. It's very appreciated from all of us up here. All of the citizens, whether they realize it or not, you bringing jobs here is a big deal. The restaurants that we have, I know that you are the, if anybody ever asks, I always say that Jen is the biggest cheerleader for the city of Peoria ever. I have gone to restaurants all over the place, talking to restaurateurs, and all of a sudden Jen will walk in the door and I'll see her at a restaurant trying to recruit them, and I've watched her in the past. The Amcor deal that you helped bring was recognized in the top 20 economic deals in the entire country. It is very appreciated, your efforts that you actually do. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Mayor, so much. I appreciate that. We are. Thank you. Wow.
I thought they were just here for the next presentation, but apparently they're here to honor
Well,
I'm
Jen.
blown
they might
away.
be, but
They might
need,
be.
but they need to understand how significant
Brilliant, I
of,
support that too.
our
Good job.
employees are.
I'm
putting
blown
up.
away. Thank you. So, goal number 1, create 3,000 new jobs. Our team, and again, kudos to the economic development team, because we are all working so hard to advance our city here with these opportunities. And I want to say, in order to do that, we have to have an aggressive strategy, and we have to have a robust lead generation to fulfill the pipeline. So that's, attracting new employers in our target sectors. Growing and revitalizing existing businesses is really key. 80% of our business community are small businesses. So we have a business retention and expansion team dedicated to ensuring their success, their long-term success, and helping provide resources, grants, anything that they need, we're there. We're a partner, we're a long-term partner. Grow Peoria is a great initiative that we did the last year, where we're matching businesses that have maybe extra space that's underutilized to connect with small businesses, sublease, to give them a chance to evolve and start out in a way that is, financially feasible and helpful. So we have a lot of efforts in our existing business community. Identifying and evaluating key development sites is another really, really important factor. You know what? I'm almost out of land. I have about 17 acres, Mike? We have about 17 acres of private land left in the city of Peoria. So we need to unlock more land in order to accommodate the leads and the businesses that are wanting to be in Peoria. In fact, 75% is controlled or owned by state land. We are turning away leads and businesses. We cannot satisfy certain requirements and requests that come in today. And there's some big good, they're big ones, some big opportunities. So that's a really important goal. The last one, foster entrepreneurship, small business growth, and innovation. We have so many programs, Pop-Up Peoria, that's giving artisans and different, retail businesses a chance to display their goods and learn about how to start a business and create a plan and what you need to do in market. And we have actually, starting next year, we're going to be taking a lot of the entrepreneur programs in-house to diversify. Okay, sorry. Contribute an additional $450 million in gross sales revenue. So we want to make sure that we steer foot traffic to existing city assets and get creative. There are some really innovative thoughts and ideas coming from my team on how could we integrate some of our retail and restaurants into our existing city assets or surrounding assets. We want to build a key brand and recruit and redevelop in infills. We have some incredible infill pieces throughout our city. In every single district, there is a piece of ground and a dirt that we could look at redeveloping, and we're engaging with developers and trying to solicit ideas and figure out and listen to the community and listen to you. What can we do? What's the highest and best use? So that's something we're really focusing our efforts on. Minimize vacancy loss when anchor lease expires or terminates. I just did this in the last half hour. I was telling Mike that there's a business that is going out of business. The owner, I've had my eyes on it because I've seen other businesses circling around interested. Owner called me. I said, oh, I have a couple right now ready to go. Let's get you connected. Same with when Bash's went out of business at 75th. We immediately worked with an entertainment tenant to move in and take that space. 99-cent store, Thunderbird's going out of business, so we're constantly aware and looking for those kinds of distress moments where we can turn a challenge into an opportunity and bring in something new. And create new mixed-use retail centers through developer and broker relationships. That's a great example, again, of what we did in the last year at Trailhead, and then there's some others coming down the pike that we want to further develop.
And if we just stay on that for a sec, Jen, I think that's an understated value that the economic development team brings. I mean, you see these anchor shopping centers that are a little aged and a business is going to close down. But it's interesting because I'll go in and say, hey, have you seen this business? And Jen's like, we've already got 3 conversations going on. We had a meeting the other day where we were trying to recruit a business to come down to downtown, and they told us, well, they're on 67th and Happy Valley. They have a restaurant opening at 83rd and Happy Valley, and then they're opening a site at Peoria Crossing at Northern and 83rd. So I think it just talks to these opportunities to not only start up new restaurants, but more importantly, reinvest here in this and in downtown and in the surrounding here, where there's great opportunities where some of these older buildings with a little bit of investment, a little bit of recruitment can then revitalize and return value throughout the city.
Thank you. And that's something we want to definitely explore throughout the year is kind of how can we support some of those businesses that do need, maybe some support with, we talked about some signage help. Okay, addressing workforce gaps is another big one. And for sake of time, I'm going to kind of start to speed up a little bit. And I apologize, and I know we have another topic to hit. So addressing workforce gaps is really what we're just going to keep capitalizing on our relationships with Westmark, for example, on how we can provide training and workforce development and recruitment. We've worked with our semiconductor professional associations and connecting them with our schools to create curriculum specifically designed to teach semiconductor microelectronics to high school students. So we're creating the labor pool starting in 9th grade to 12th grade and possibly 6th grade to 8th grade. Also connecting targeting industry employers with local job seekers, starting internship programs, apprenticeship programs, so that there's a lot of momentum to strengthen our workforce and make sure that we have enough to satisfy the needs of our future companies and existing ones as well. Our last goal is to enable tourism growth so we can reach hotel motel gross sales tax $3 million a year Continue to elevate Peoria as a tourism destination through our marketing efforts. We have a really close relationship with the Office of Communication that helps us with our Visit Peoria and Visit social media, and they are also helping us with messaging in our website to keep tourism front of mind and make sure that Peoria is exposed when we have spring training and different events. We want to make sure to increase awareness. Also engaging with the sports complex to expand business awareness as well. Right now, because there's so many other initiatives going on, we are probably this is important, but we're not going to do all of this today. I'm probably going to push this out to maybe year 3, 4, and 5 and really focus on attracting new hotel development, because we haven't had new hotels in, I don't know, many, many years, 20-something years. They've all are concentrated around the Peoria Sports Complex. And so right now, in the last year, we've been working with 4 hotels. We have 2 hotels that are about to break ground next month, and then we have 2 other active hotel deals that we're working as well. So 4 new hotels are in motion. So that's the part that we're going to continue our efforts on, and the rest we'll kind of just pause for a little bit. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Councilor Patena.
Thank you, Mayor. Jen, our CEOs, they definitely do their due diligence when thinking about moving their companies. Can you give me a few examples of what they're looking for in a city? And is Peoria positioned?
Mayor, thank you so much. That's a great question. And absolutely, we're well positioned, and that's something we really pride ourselves on. They're looking for 3 or 4 big ones. Workforce is really, they know that their operation cannot succeed without adequate workforce. As well as infrastructure and transportation corridors, access to freeways and access to, to a strong transportation grid. Speed to market is huge, right? They want to know that they're going to partner with a city that makes them a priority and works with them to meet their, permitting deadlines and whatever, they want a really strong partner. And I think they're starting to see that they have seen, and they are continuing to recognize how much we are working alongside and an extension of their team to make sure their project is an overall success. So there's a lot of, factors. I mean, pricing, market conditions, there's a lot of competition. We're competing with the Valley as well as the country. So I would say the workforce, infrastructure, and market.
If I could just build on that, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Patena, one of the challenges for the city is, as Jen had mentioned earlier, there's not a lot of infill or vacant land of any real size. We've got a couple of parcels here or there that are privately owned. The city still owns 14 acres here at Peoria in the 101. This fits into the general plan amendment. This fits into the PCD efforts and rezoning efforts in the North Peoria Gateway and the Peoria Innovation Core, and why that's so important. 75% of the developable land left in the city is owned by state land. And so building a relationship with state land and creating a pathway that's mutually beneficial, right? Their benefit or their value is selling land for the highest and best use to return for K through 12 education. For us, it's an opportunity to offer a beautiful part of our city that's actually thoughtfully constructed in a master plan way and zoned in a way that is complementary to what exists, but then allows us to bring land to market to bring some of these quality jobs and retail into play.
And a quick follow-up is, have you ever identified what other states are our biggest competitors?
Yes, I try to stay away from them when we're doing like those speed dating things at conferences. Texas, Tennessee.
Indiana.
New York with their microelectronics and semiconductor grant program. I mean, we have some very serious competition. It does piggyback on what Mike was saying. I mean, they want shovel-ready sites, right? So time is money, and these deals they want to get them rolling. But we do have a lot of strong factors with quality of life also. I mean, we're safe, clean, vibrant, and we have top performing schools. It helped when we were ranked the #1 high school in the United States the other day. I actually received calls from prospects from that.
I want to make a point of what Councilmember Patena just asked, which I don't know if people in this room might or might not pick up. Who are we competing with? What states are we competing with? We're not competing with other cities, we're competing with other states. The difference is we, with the direction that we're going as a city, which is poignant that you would actually go that direction, because we've talked about this. States of Texas, Tennessee, Kentucky, New York, Indiana, those are states that we compete with on a weekly and monthly and yearly basis, and that's how significant this is. Our future, and especially the direction we're going, is very bright, and we are competing with those actual states and not cities. So I appreciate you pointing that out. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you for
you
your
so much.
presentation.
Mayor and Council, as Jennifer and Mike are giving way to our next presentation, the next presentation is on the airport feasibility study. And to continue the theme of economic development, we have Assistant City Manager Rick Buss, along with Eric Pfeiffer from Kaufman and Associates, to present the results of the first of 6 airport feasibility studies analyzing the viability of developing an air park in North Peoria. And Kevin Burke, if you could look at your phone for me, I'd appreciate it. Could you look at your phone for me, please? Thank you.
Okay. Oh, let's go back here. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Is this on? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity to present this study session item. One of our goals here is to make sure that everybody here tonight and the council understands that everything we present tonight is fact. And the process of evaluating the feasibility and of an air park is all data-driven. That's the approach staff has taken. And if you remember, economic development is a top priority of council. Public safety, economic development, and water security. Those are your top priorities that you have directed us to pursue and deploy. An air park represents a significant economic development opportunity, and I want to emphasize opportunity. The feasibility study simply represents just one part of evaluating that opportunity. And really, really importantly, is a fully informed council can best make fully informed decisions. And they can disseminate that information to their citizens as well. I think that's very, very important. And that's our goal here, is to make sure that the council is fully informed, as well as the public. So a couple of things, let's talk about magnitude and why we would look at this and look at some of the recent studies that have been done on airports. And 2 weeks ago, City of Phoenix released a study that was done for the City of Phoenix airport system. That includes Sky Harbor, Deer Valley, and Goodyear. Their annual economic impact, is $44.3 billion. That study was done by ASU. I've put up there the link, so if anybody wants to link and read that study for themselves. Again, data-driven, fact-based. 2021, a company called IHS Markit did a study on the airports across the state of Arizona. $121.4 billion in economic impact. Again, there's the link if anybody wants to see it and verify that. So when we look at the Peoria Air Park, the number you see up there, an annual total economic impact of a potential air park, is $1 billion. That is the most conservative estimate that our economic impact consultant has come up with. $60 million in state and local tax revenue. So the reason why you see a picture of the Super Bowl is that's the equivalent of having a Super Bowl in Peoria every year. So it makes sense to study this opportunity. So you might ask, why do we have economic development? So in general, well, first of all, it's all about fiscal sustainability and responsible stewardship of the public's money. In general, economic development provides revenue to provide for necessary services and amenities. But I think what gets missed a lot is not just the capital, it's the maintenance and operations to provide these for these assets. So if we put an asset out there and we build one, if we don't have any funds to continue the M&O, we are in trouble. And it's an old adage in city management, say, today's asset is tomorrow's unfunded liability. So we need to have the funds to not only build the asset, we need to take care of it. It is also necessary to keep taxes low. Residential revenue is insufficient. So if you took away economic developments, the dollars are generated through businesses and commercial and industrial, you will not have enough money to provide for those amenities and services. So just use by example is a lot of city managers use this example. For every dollar perhaps that you take in on revenue from a resident, it takes you $1.25, $1.50, $2 to provide those services. So you always have a shortfall. So this sets, from a public policy perspective and from a mayor and council perspective, you have a choice. You can either have economic development or you can raise taxes. This council has clearly said we're going to pursue economic development, and staff has carried on with that directive. Okay, quickly on the feasibility study, and then I'll be turning over here in a minute to the expert. Couple things. The feasibility study does not determine whether an airport or air park will be built. Again, does not determine whether an airport or air park will be built. Later on tonight, there's budget. Council is not voting on an air park in the FY 24-25 budget. It is not being voted on. So we need to be that very, very clear. We've heard a lot of rumors out there, a lot of misinformation, disinformation, that somehow tonight is about voting for an air park. It is not. The feasibility study is simply the first step in the evaluation process. I've listed up there the 6 that we're doing. The first 4 are required by the FAA. The other 2 are additional studies we're doing to look at the economic impact, not just for the airport, but the surrounding property values. These are ongoing. These are not completed. It's also important that these are conducted by third-party independent experts. Staff's job is to bring the facts to you, the council, and I will point out for the benefit of the public that not one member of council has sat in one of these economic or working group meetings, not one. It's all been staff and subject matter experts. And we will follow where the facts take us. So there's not a predefined narrative that we're trying to get data to fit into facts. We're letting the subject matter experts look at this independently and see where those facts take us. So, involvement. Briefly, these are some of the folks on the, or groups that are on the Air Park Technical Advisory Group. A lot of staff involvement from engineering to planning, the city, Kaufman Associates, it's represented by Eric Pfeiffer to my left here. Luke Air Force Base has been involved. City of Phoenix, you've probably heard about the 2-page letter that we got from City of Phoenix. You're right, we did get that letter. And they expressed some challenges of what it would take to build an airport. Guess what, Mayor and Council? They're the same challenges that we share. So I'd like to thank the City of Phoenix specifically for their support in helping us evaluate this potential opportunity. I think I saw Lieutenant Colonel Rusty Mitchell, who many of you know, formerly of Luke. He is on our team to help make sure that Luke's mission is not only is ensured, but it's also enhanced. So no matter what we do as we move down this process, make sure that Luke is first and foremost taken care of. We've talked to U.S. senators to make sure that what's happening in D.C. and the FAA, Rounds Consulting Group, the independent economic analysis. Mr. Hessman is a charitable pilot and a Vistancia resident. And I will tell you, I spoke to him today, and he said, I would like to wait for all the facts to come out. I'm not decided, yet he's on our technical advisory group. But he wants to wait for all the facts to come out, go through the process to make a fully informed decision or recommendation to you as a council. Obviously, Prime Policy Group is a lobbyist group that we have in D.C. that helps us with FAA, and of course, the FAA has been involved. Okay, with that, I'd like to turn it over to Eric. So Eric's going to take us through, the technical aspects of what the feasibility study overview is and what the results are. So take it away. You want the clicker now?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Mayor, Council, thank you so much for having me here today. Just a real brief introduction of myself and my company. Kaufman Associates has been around since 1979 doing airport consulting work, specifically doing master planning, environmental studies, feasibility studies like this. So airport work is all we do, and we do it all over the country, and we've done a lot of work for the airports in the Phoenix area. So we're very familiar with the process, with the Federal Aviation Administration and the requirements that they have for airports, as well as the industry and what's going on in aviation in general. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of the feasibility study that we've prepared here. This first exhibit shown here is the vicinity airspace of the Phoenix metropolitan area. And obviously, this is going to be dominated by the Class B airspace surrounding Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport. The purpose of showing you this, because airspace is a pretty complex issue, is to explain and describe that part of the next step in this process, so beyond the feasibility study and looking forward to the site selection process, we need to be thoughtful in how a potential airport for the city of Peoria would play into the regional airspace system. We have a number of military operating areas and alert areas and things like that, and we want to make sure that this a potential future airport would work into that system of airspace. And so we actually have a sub-consultant that would be brought on specifically to evaluate in terms of evaluating very complex airspace. So this would be something of high priority in this next step moving forward. This is the service area exhibit that we evaluated. And so you see a 30 nautical mile ring around the city of Peoria, and that's roughly the standard service area for a general aviation airport, considering for the National Plan of Integrated Airport System, the NIPIAS. The NIPIAS is the national system of over 3,000 airports that include commercial service, general aviation, airports, and it serves as a system, the airspace system of the country, providing this infrastructure for air travel. And so one of the interesting aspects of this exhibit here is we're also showing the number of registered aircraft by zip code. And you'll notice that the Peoria area, its zip code has between 51 and 100 registered aircraft right now. And so similarly to the presentation that you guys just saw about people traveling outside of Peoria to go and work, we're also seeing the registered aircraft right here locally being based at other airports in other cities. And so that is a potential huge revenue stream and tax revenue and things like that that the airport is missing out on, or that the city is missing out on because it does not have an airport. So this is a really important factor when we look at the market that we're trying to serve here and whether there is a demand for an airport locally. And so there is a lot of registered aircraft in the region, and that is an important factor. You also see some of the regional airports, some of your competition, that would be Deer Valley, Glendale, all the way up over into Wickenburg. And so these airports are all essentially serving what would be your local market potentially. So this is the forecast summary that we've prepared. And so based upon what we've identified as your market area, we think that there's the potential for 80 based aircraft to be able to base at a theoretical Peoria airport today. The Deer Valley Airport, for example, has over 500 individuals on waiting lists for hangar space. And that is some of those people, one of the individuals at the head of the line for one of those hangars has been on for over 5 years.
Can you repeat that one more time?
The first person on the waiting list, waiting for a hangar.
Step back even further. So repeat.
Sure, yeah, there's over 500 individuals on a hangar waiting list at Deer Valley Airport alone. So that, and this is a common tale at all the airports within the metropolitan area. There's a huge demand for hangar capacity. And so that tells us there's absolutely a market for another airport in this area. And we think about 80 total based aircraft, and that includes small single-engine pistons on up to more sophisticated aircraft such as business jets and turboprops and helicopters and things like that that are going to be driving higher revenues in terms of fuel flowage and things like that. Over the course of about a 20-year period, we project the number of based aircraft could reach over 217 total based aircraft. And airport operations, the takeoffs and landings occurring at the airport. Right now, we estimate about 37,400 as a starting point, growing to over 149,000 total in a 20-year period. So again, our analysis shows that there's a very, very strong demand for an airport facility in Peoria. The types of aircraft served are represented here in this chart, the aircraft reference codes. So every aircraft, general aviation, commercial, are represented by their approach speeds and their wingspans. So the way this is broken down, the A1 category there in the top left are going to be your smallest and slowest aircraft in the fleet. Moving up to the D5 category, which are going to be your wide-body commercial service aircraft. So we have the C and D3 up to the D5 categories crossed out because those categories are dominated by commercial aircraft, narrow-body and wide-body types of aircraft. And that's not the type of facility that we're talking about accommodating here in Peoria. This would be a general aviation facility targeting, again, the wide range of general aviation traffic from small single engines on up to initially the small business jet class of aircraft, which would be represented by that B2 category. Aircraft such as the Cessna Citation jets, Falcon jets, things like that. Over the course of 20 years, as the airport grows and expands its facilities, we see it accommodating critical aircraft such as the larger Gulfstream business jets within the C/D2 and up to D3 category. So the initial facility requirements that we identified for a potential general aviation airport in Peoria would include a single runway of 5,600 feet long by 75 feet wide, a full-length parallel taxiway, and the pretty standard landside facilities to support up to 80 based aircraft, which includes a variety of hangar types and sizes, T-hangars, box hangars, conventional style hangars, and that would also support any specialty aviation service operators or the airport businesses that would provide services and facilities to the base tenants. We'd also include aircraft parking aprons, general aviation terminal facility, and vehicle access and parking lots along with that. So these two graphics here show a prototype airport, both in the initial stage and in the built-out long-term stage that we've discussed. So initially, that 5,600-foot-long runway and the safety areas associated with that would take up about 280 acres of property. That's going to include, again, the runway and the safety areas, as well as the landside facilities, aprons, hangars, vehicle access, and things like that. Ultimately, going to that larger design would look at extending the runway to 7,600 feet and widening the runway pavement to 100 feet wide. And so that almost ends up doubling the space requirements of the airport to 550 total acres. But starting in the initial stage, the prototype initial stage here allows you to grow over time into that ultimate condition. So, understanding that, starting small and growing eventually as demand dictates. So the airport benefits, and Rick did a great job of talking about the economic potential of an airport and the air park along with that. And the feasibility study touched on this at a very high level, initially looking at about a $900,000 total economic impact of the airport. And that's just factoring in the jobs, the payroll of the businesses on the airport. So beyond that, you get into the visitors coming to your airport and the individuals coming to look for their business development opportunities within the city, and what they end up developing is beyond what we're evaluating in this here. So there's great potential in the economic benefit of having an airport. The transportation benefits, like we've talked about, having that here locally rather than having your community and your citizens have to drive to other neighboring airports and things like that have considerable cost and impacts associated with them. So having, again, a local airport is going to be very beneficial overall. So the conclusion, it's very straightforward. Like I've already stated, the biggest piece of this is that demand right now. And our conclusion is that there is very, very strong demand for an airport in Peoria. That is really where the feasibility study leaves off, and the whole purpose of the next steps is to look at, okay, where's that airport going to best fit into the community, and what are the environmental impacts of that? And so we will evaluate that at the next level, but really, again, at a high level, this purpose is to say, this is feasible and worthy of further analysis. It meets the threshold for feasibility, like I've already said. The FAA, in their National Plan of Integrated Airport System, to become part of that system, you need to have a minimum of 10 based aircraft. And as we show here, we show a need or demand of to 80 initial based aircraft. So you certainly meet those requirements. There is a void in the regional system, certainly with the number of people waiting on a hangar waiting list. And so this airport would also serve as a capacity relief for Sky Harbor International Airport. That's kind of the purpose of the general aviation airports around the metropolitan area here, is to relieve Sky Harbor so it can serve in its function as a commercial service airport, whereas these would be serving all the other forms of aviation, which is why it's called general aviation. So there's a lot of benefits to this, as we've talked about, and certainly is viable and worthy of further study. There are two, let's see, I'll just talk real quick on kind of the steps forward and what your options are in terms of development of the airport. Now, if you want to follow the FAA's route and do their process, we're talking about probably a 7 to 10 year process of going through the site selection study. You have to do an airport master plan, an ALP development, airport layout plan, and the environmental process. Each of those processes are going to involve numerous opportunities for public outreach and comment. The FAA very much wants these processes to be done out in the open, so it's a transparent process, so everyone in the community has an opportunity to put their thoughts and feedback into the process. That is absolutely going to be a requirement. And so it is a long process, but if you follow those steps and those processes that the FAA has lined out and become part of the National Plan of Integrated Airport System, you will be eligible for grant funding up to 90% and possibly even to 95% for eligible projects. And that includes these studies that we're talking about doing. And then ultimately even the development and construction of the airport itself. So historically, like I said, 90% of eligible projects are funded through the Airport Improvement Program. Right now, Congress is looking at reauthorizing the Airport Improvement Program, and the initial drafts of that reauthorization are talking about taking it up to 95% eligible funding. So again, if you follow their process, it takes a little bit longer, but you are opening yourself up to a great opportunity in terms of grant funding for your airport. If you choose not to go that route, you certainly can self-fund, and you can do it much, much faster. But then you would be fronting the cost entirely on your own.
So thank you, Eric, and we'll take some questions here in a minute, but I want to, we know there's a lot of questions and there's a lot of interested people right behind me. But tomorrow, we will have the entire final feasibility study report. Okay, that's not a fire alarm, okay. Yes, no, we're going to post the entire feasibility study reports on the website for anyone to download, look at, review. Also, there's, in front of you, Mayor and Council, there's an economic impact analysis memorandum that backs up the $1 billion conservative estimate for what we call outside the fence economic development. And there's an airpark fact sheet that's been on the website since June of 2023. And I will tell you, at least 95% of the questions we receive are answered in that fact sheet. So we've updated that. We're going to put them all in one spot, an easy spot to for anybody to grab and download. And you have all the information we have. It's pure data. And you know, with that, we can take some questions.
Councilor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think you answered my first question is when is this going to be available? Because there's a lot of information for us to digest, and I know the residents have been emailing and calling and wanting this information, so I'm glad that you're going to be putting that out on the website. Can you go back to the first slide as far as the time frame? You got a long way to go. Actually, maybe it was the third slide. So when is the soonest that this is going to come to council for a vote? Because there was a lot of steps in that process. It looked like 7 or 8 studies that this had to go through. So at what point does this come back to council or come to council for an actual vote?
Mayor and Vice Mayor, depends on which routes you want to take. If you take the NIPIAS route, it's several years down the road as you go through the various studies. If you take the non-NIPIAS route, we're probably taking, if I had to guess, a year to year and a half where you would make a decision whether you go forward or not. But it's really important that we do the study so you can make a fully informed decision. So I think that's important. And a note on for the public is tonight's in front of Mayor and Council is the first time this council has actually gotten a copy of the reports. I think I broke the printer last night. Why did we wait to do this? Because the study wasn't done until very late last week. And in fact, we had a revision because some page numbers had to be corrected. So we turned in our homework, completed and double checked. So, but you're probably looking year and a half, 2 years out, maybe. I think, if I had to guess, fiscal year 2026.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Schaefer.
Thank you, Mayor. Rick, Eric, good presentation, a lot of data. Look forward to diving in and digesting it, and thank you for making it available to the public tomorrow. Rick, just a couple questions. I think it was slide 2. It talked about the $44 billion impact or the $121 billion impact. Something that we might want to follow up, because I know this information is fresh, is how much did the city subsidize? And so that's great to see the economic impact, but just is there any subsidies involved there? And then slide 3, I think it's the next one. It might be, I apologize. You talked about maintenance and like the ongoing costs of, if we have for future, yeah, maybe it's there. Maybe for future, if we have an idea of like what the ongoing maintenance or operational costs would be, that would be good. Okay. And then slide 5, I think, Rick, I think it's 2. Yeah, that one right there. It talked about the 6 different studies, the evaluation process. And I think Eric answered this question, so correct me if I'm wrong. The public will be involved in every single one of these processes. Is that correct? Or these studies?
Mayor, Council, that's correct, yes. The intent in each of these studies will be to make information available to the public and allow them to offer feedback.
And Eric, just to follow up on that.
Mayor, Councilman Schaefer, if I could add, we know there's a lot of data to digest here, and we get that, and we're happy to come back more than that's required by the FAA, because we know there's a lot to download. It's complex. I will tell you, going through this process, it's very, very complex. There's a lot to download, which probably was one reason why you probably get a lot of questions from the public, because there is so much information. There's so many unknowns. So we're happy to come back and do another study session if the council deems that's be helpful, even before we get to the site selection study. But when we get the site selection study done, we'll have another public meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Rick. A couple questions. You talked about Luke Air Force Base. Thank you for identifying Luke Air Force Base. I served at Luke 20 plus years ago. Now, so was Luke taken into consideration, or was this just a feasibility based upon the number of planes and flight patterns, or will there, and you talked about another consultant doing some additional work for Luke or taking them into consideration. Can you expand on that, please, Eric?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilman, that's a great question. So You're right. This was the feasibility of an airport based upon the demand for general aviation activity here locally. So it didn't necessarily factor in Luke in terms of, how we look at that, Luke being a military installation. But the next step in this process will very much factor in Luke and how they operate in their airspace, because the last thing we want to do is create conflict with how they're operating in the airspace and their routes to and from the military operating areas and things like that. So the subconsultant we have lined up to look at that is very, very experienced in looking at military airspace and very complex airspace and making sure that there's no conflict. So they will be brought on to look at that during the site selection process.
Yeah, just a point of clarification, so Luke has been involved in this process. So if you know son, Rusty Mitchell, who I believe I saw him walk in today, he's been part of the team. We've also been working with Chris Toll over at Luke to make sure that they're involved in this process. Because again, whether it's required or not, it's good, it's the right thing to do, is to involve them very, very early in the process. So that's one very, very well.
Let me add to that, and we've had multiple conversations. In fact, I've had the conversation openly with both the commanding general of Luke, as well as Chris Toll, but also Mr. Mitchell, who represents the city, who served there for a very long time and actually defended the base from the onslaught of overreaching. And we've made it very clear throughout the process that our job is to protect Luke. I think that's not only our city's job, it's our nation's job, is to protect what is the 5th largest air force in the world, and make sure that Luke is actually protected and their airspace is protected. Every step of the way, if you have a conversation with any of the individuals that are out there, and I would tell you, if you ask Rusty Mitchell as well, he will tell you he would not do anything. In fact, he has said this multiple times. He would never do anything that would actually jeopardize, and neither would we. It is extremely important to our city. We have a lot of airmen, including yourself, that serve there, but also live there, and we want to make sure that Luke is protected throughout this process in every step of the way. There is no factor that we would even look into any of these factors if we thought that it would actually hurt Luke. So just so everybody understands that.
Thank you, Mayor. And one final question. Eric, at the very end, you talked about grant funding, 90 to 95%. Can you expand on that a little bit? And what would be, and then you talked about self-funding. What would be the average cost of a facility of this size?
Sure, Mayor, Councilman, great question. So the grant funding would be through the Airport Improvement Program. It's a user-based system that collects taxes on passenger tickets and aviation fuels and things like that. So that's how the fund is funded. And so an eligible project, if you're included in the National Plan of Integrated Airport System, can be funded at 90%, possibly up to 95%. The Arizona State Department of Transportation will also contribute half of the local match on that. And so there is participation at the state level on federally eligible projects. So then on any eligible project, you're left with the remainder of that local. In terms of the total estimated project costs we put together for this, initially, that initial stage is about $150 million total. Factoring in your eligibility of federal and state grants, you're looking at a local match of about 23% of that total. And so a good chunk of that will be covered by, potentially by federal and state grants.
Councilor Patena.
Thank you, Mayor. A lot of us up here have heard concerns about noise generated from the aircraft. Can you speak to that issue?
Sure, yeah, and that's a great question, and certainly something of great concern anytime you're talking about airport-related issues. The site selection study will include some environmental evaluations of potential noise impacts, because certainly the priority is to ensure the airport is compatible with its surrounding land uses, and obviously there's any impacts on residential properties or noise-sensitive areas, that's going to be a topic of discussion and concern. And part of, again, the master plan, the site selection study, each of the following studies that will be performed will look into the potential noise impacts. In particularly, the environmental study will perform a noise footprint for the airport based upon the projected levels of activity and the types of aircraft operating at the airport, and identify potential noise-sensitive areas based upon that analysis. And as part of the site selection, master plan environmental, if there are any potential significant impacts of noise discovered, there's ways to mitigate that, or you know, scoring that in terms of your site selection study. If there's a site that has a minimal impact on noise, you score that at a much higher priority. But yes, we've not looked at that yet in terms of noise in this feasibility study, but that will very much be part of the next several studies that are prepared.
Councilor Crawford.
Is the city looking to pursue this at any cost to the taxpayer?
Oh, Mayor, council member, that was a loaded question. No. No, of course not. You know, it has to make, business sense, financial sense for us to do that. So absolutely. I think, that's a big reason for doing the economic impact studies, to make sure that this is a positive economic impact to the city. If it doesn't make sense to move forward.
Thank you. I have one more question, Mayor. So has the city worked with Kaufman in the past? And how was Kaufman selected to do this?
Okay, so I guess I can answer that. So roughly 20 years ago, the city did do a feasibility study, and guess what? That was done by Kaufman as well. So they're kind of the resident experts in this space for this size of airport and proposed airport, that type of thing. And they were on the state contract, so we ran it through procurement, checked all the boxes. So.
Okay, any other further questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so with that, what we are going to do is, you heard the young children that were actually in the hallway just briefly. We have instead of moving, we've decided that instead of moving everybody out of their seats, what we're going to do is, as a council, we're going to go over to the Pine Room and we're going to do an art presentation. And then what we will do is we will do that presentation, and then we will actually take photos with the children, because it's probably one of the most special things that they get to do on a yearly basis, actually twice a year. And then we will do is we will actually come back in. That way we don't have to displace anybody or move anybody out and go through that process, if that's okay. Well, it is, because that's what I'm deciding. So anyway, that's the way. So we're adjourned until then.
The Mayor and City Council welcome you to the Peoria City Council meeting. As a courtesy to others, please silence all phones. If you would like to address an issue that is on the agenda, or if you would like to speak to the council regarding a non-agenda item, please complete a speaker request form, which can be found in the front lobby of the Peoria City Council chambers or in the tray to the left of the speaker's podium. Please place the completed speaker request form in the second tray to the left of the speaker's podium labeled Request to Speak. All speakers will have 3 minutes to complete their comments. A countdown clock is easily visible on the left side of the wall behind the City Council dais. Only items listed on the agenda may be addressed by the council. Since items presented as part of a speaker's request have not been listed on the agenda, and due to the requirements of open meeting laws, the council will be unable to respond to items presented as part of the speaker's request. However, please be aware that your comments will be noted. The speaker's name will be called to speak at the appropriate time in the order that the forms were received. Thank you for your interest and participation in the Peoria City Council meeting.
Good evening and welcome to Peoria City Council meeting. I hereby call the meeting of May 7th, 2024 to order. Those who are able, please stand for the invocation by Hindu HSS, and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Do you guys want to you guys can come down and grab the microphone? Here you go.
Namaste. Shariram surupam tatha vakalatram yashascharuchitram dhanam merutulyam manashchena lagnam gurorangri padme tatah kim tatah kim tatah kim tatah kim Yasho me gatam dikshu dana pratapa jagadvastu sarvam kareyat prasadat manashchena lagnam gurorangri padme tatah kim tatah kim tatah kim tatah kim. Meaning of this shloka is, a guru is a teacher who dispels ignorance or who leads people to the righteous way of life, thus guiding individuals from darkness to enlightenment. One may have a beautiful body, consort, great fame, and enormous wealth. One may also have immense merits and charitable reputation spread across the world. All of this can be of no use if the mind has no faith, humbleness, or devotion towards their guru. This shloka is dedicated to teachers because this is the Teachers Appreciation Week. Dhanyavada. Thank you.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Very good job. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Beck,
Here?
Vice Mayor Edwards,
Here?
Mayor Pro Tem Crawford,
Here.
Councilmember Finn,
Here.
Councilmember Patena,
Here.
Councilmember Dunn,
Here.
Councilmember Schaefer,
Present.
Council Youth Liaison Srivastava,
Here.
and Council Youth Liaison Wetstein.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. If If anyone would like to address the council about a matter, please submit a speaker request form, which can be found at the entrance. There's some reverb there. Entrance to the room, to the clerk at this time. Today we have several presentations to introduce your, we already did the young artist actually, so that was going to be planned in here. Next we will present the service awards for our two council youth liaisons, Anna and Elise. Thank you for both your services over the last year and your willingness and desire to learn more about the local government and participate in the process. To hand out the awards, I will recognize Brian Carrico, Family and Youth Superintendent.
So I'd like to invite the youth council liaisons to come on down and get their award. And if you all join me in a round of applause for their service.
So this week is Professional Municipal Clerks Week. To share a proclamation celebrating our clerk's office, I would like to recognize Councilmember Bill Patenna. I think that means the clerk has to go down.
Before I read the proclamation, I'd just like to say that I have a great deal of respect for the city clerk's office for what they do, especially for elected officials. I've worked with them for over 12 years, and I appreciate all their efforts. Thank you. So we're going to do a lot of whereases here. So whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the office of the municipal clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and the agencies of government at other levels, and whereas professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. And whereas the professional municipal clerk serves as the information center of functions of local government and community, and whereas professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the professional municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. Now therefore, I, Bill Patenna, on behalf of Jason Beck, Mayor of the City of Peoria, County of Maricopa, State of Arizona, in conformity therewith and by the virtue of the authority vested in Mayor Beck, do hereby proclaim May 5th, what is today?
It's the 7th. I signed it on the 5th.
Oh, it started on May 5th. May 5th through 11th as Professional Municipal Clerks Week. Congratulations.
All the organizational that you guys do and trying to keep us in tow is greatly appreciated. So thank you. And your entire office as well. So thank you. Now council and members of the public will receive an update from staff on major general plan amendments. To provide this presentation, we will introduce Mr. Chris Hawkes, Peoria Planning Director. How are you doing, sir?
Great. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the time and the opportunity tonight. What I'd like to do is just spend a few brief minutes and talk about where we are in the general plan amendment cycle for 2024, and also talk about some recent refinements we've done to our proposed general plan amendments. So in our schedule, we have 9 public touch points. This will include, of course, public hearings before the Planning Commission and the City Council in months ahead. Most recently, we held 2 community meetings. One was held at Rio Vista, and the other was conducted online. We had approximately 50 attendees at each meeting, which, if you've been to a general plan meeting, this is a great turnout, right? We don't normally get that many folks to a general plan meeting, so that's great. Separately through the process, we've also received 15 letters thus far from the general public. So what I'm going to do in my remarks is just briefly describe again what a general plan is, but I also, as I talk through the amendments, I want to step back a little bit through the process. There have been some misconceptions out there about what the amendment is and what it is not, and I'd like to, and sometimes these misconceptions then get amplified through, the media, social media, and so forth. And so I want to spend some opportunity and just clarify what we're doing and what we're not doing, and just provide a little more clarity to the discussion here. As a quick refresher, the general plan is the city's overarching policy document. It guides growth and development decisions into the future. It's intended to be aspirational and visionary. So the policies in the document, they guide on a multitude of topics. So if you look, I know it's hard to see the screen on the right, but there are about 22 topics, and these are all topics addressed in the general plan. They include things like land use, parks and open space, economic development, library, and so forth. So it's pretty comprehensive. Now, a little bit about general plans. Arizona is pretty unique in the country in that the state law requires that a general plan be ratified by the voters at least every 10 years. We're still the only state that requires a general plan to go to voters. So our last ratification was 2020, and we've had 2 prior ratifications before that. So very, very happy about those results. Now, when we look at the ratification of a general plan, good planning practice recognizes that a general plan is not a static document, meaning it's a typical practice across municipalities not only to look at refinements in the intervening years, but also to have a general plan that is continually responsive to evolving development conditions, evolving trends, new infrastructure inputs, and so forth. In fact, just looking back from between 2010 and 2020, we went through 7 to 8 annual cycles where we refined the general plan continually just to keep it responsive. So whereas the general plan sets the vision and outcome, the tactics, the strategies, those might be refined to, again, to remain responsive. So I like to think of it as the metaphor I would use is a road trip, right? You're going on a road trip over the summer, you have a destination in mind. How you get there, whether you walk or drive or bike or with the timing, those things all change. And so whereas the vision is set out there, how you accomplish that vision might be refined along the way. Now, state law recognizes that general plans will be updated from time to time. In the process, we've heard some sentiment that amendments should go to voters. And just to note, there is a process that's enshrined in state statute for how amendments are processed. So while the plan, and as I mentioned, the ratification is subject to that ratification process every 10 years, state law mandates that local elected body, the city council, has the authority and duty to act on any amendments. So we are obligated to follow the process enshrined by state statute, which is to process amendments through the city council. All right, what this graphic illustrates is just 4 areas of amendment that we're going through in the general plan. So we're talking about a new category, a new state land use category, and modifications to the land use map. We're talking about some changes to the circulation plan. This is a forward-looking document that identifies the roadway network of the future. To be honest on this one, about 90% of these are simply updates, just recognizing existing roadways that are there today. They're no longer future roadways, so those are maintenance conditions. Also, some text changes to the Parks and Recreation section. And then finally, how do we update the general plan? The general plan makes a distinction between minor amendments and major amendments. And so there were some proposed amendments in this section. And so we'll talk about some refinements here. Most of the comments we've had so far have been related to the first topic, the state land category, and the major amendment criteria. So for the rest of the few slides, I'm going to spend my time talking about those 2 items. Let's talk about the first one. The graphic that you're looking at on the right, that is a public land ownership. So the map shows areas in yellow, predominantly north of State Route 74. Those are lands that are owned by the Bureau of Land Management. They largely have a recreational position. They have their own plan and how they manage those areas. Areas in blue are areas that are owned by the State Land Department. So A little bit about the State Land Department. You heard a little bit about it during the study session today, but they have a constitutional mission that is they manage state trust lands across the state of Arizona. There's about 9.2 million acres of state trust land. 35,000 of those, or 55 square miles, are within Peoria's planning area. So we've got quite a large footprint of state land in the city of Peoria. So the way state land is, their mission is they hold land until they optimize its value. And then through leases and/or auctions, land sales, they raise proceeds. And so there's underlying beneficiaries. There happens to be 13 underlying beneficiaries, and the largest beneficiary is common schools or education. That's one way we fund education in the state. Now, one of the things that, one of the misconceptions that we've heard throughout the process is that state land should be perpetually vacant or should not be developed. And just to note, it would be a real fallacy to believe that it will not be auctioned off someday when it reaches its value or will not be developed. All state land will eventually be developed. Many of these areas, as you can see on the screen, you look in the middle part of the city with Loop 303, these are strategically positioned along the Loop 303. So when you think about the remaining vacant area within the city of Peoria, and I think we had remarks earlier about it, effectively 75% of the remaining vacant area is state land. So it's really important to have a good relationship with the State Land Department and to work collaboratively on how those lands are managed and planned for in the future. Again, there's been a longstanding council priority for economic development, and that is to expand the footprint of quality jobs in base sectors throughout the city. The proposal, the first item was to create a new land use designation. So the land use designation is intended to apply to trust lands of regional significance. More specifically, we're looking to apply it to 2 specific areas that will have an underlying master plan. I'll talk about that in a minute. But the master plan, the underlying, when I say master plan, it also is synonymous with zoning or a planned community district. They're all the same thing. The master plan is the details undergirding that area. So the 2 areas we're talking about, if you look at the graphic on the left, that's what we're calling the North Peoria Gateway. It's effectively about 1,620 acres. It's centered along the Loop 303 in Happy Valley, very important area. The other area that we're looking at is on the right, which we're calling the Peoria Innovation Core, and this is effectively 6,700 acres. So it's effectively all those lands. I know it might be hard to see on the screen, but you can see the red outline, but it's everything from Pleasant Valley all the way up north to State Route 74. So the idea for a state land designation, really what this does is it creates an umbrella. It says that we want to treat these areas as a cohesive, unified framework of thinking. All it says is that we're going to go forward and we're going to do a master plan underneath these areas. The master plan then will identify what are the allowable land uses, what are the densities, where will commercial areas be, what will the roadway and infrastructure inputs be for the area. So the land use designation just creates the platform to go forward and to do a master plan, which of course includes its own public engagement process. When you go through a rezoning process, as you all know, there's quite a bit of public engagement inputs there. So this just says we're going to treat this as a unit. It's the umbrella for that area. Now, the master plan process, I will note, has kicked off for the North Peoria Gateway, meaning we have a rezoning case in for the 1,600 acres. The State Land Department is the applicant, and so that is very early in the process. There is a public meeting scheduled for May 15th on that one. On the one on the right, the master plan process has not kicked off for that one. That is in the future at some undetermined date. Collectively, these 2 areas comprise 8,300 acres. I have seen some questions or some contemplations that the city was purchasing 8,300 acres. That is not true. All we're talking about doing is master planning 2 specific areas that collectively are 8,300 acres in size. But to put a finer point, the idea of creating an umbrella designation for an area is not atypical, or it's not dissimilar to what we already do for 3 areas in Peoria. So if you look at the graphic up there, what you can see are some master plans that we all know and love, including Vistancia, Saddleback Heights, and Lake Pleasant Heights. You're looking at the existing general plan map, and you'll note that the designations for those 3 areas, they're designated master plan area. Again, that's that large umbrella that says we're going to go forward, treat this as one unit, we're going to have an underlying rezone or master plan that identifies all the specific details of that. This really is very similar to that effort there. It contains all the regulatory requirements that apply to that community. Another misconception that I've heard is that the state land use designation will eliminate open space or critical areas. Folks, as I mentioned, general plan is not zoning. That is not a factual statement. It does not change the existing regulations that we already have on the books that protect hillside areas, washes, cultural facilities, or natural open space. Those regulations remain in place. And in fact, someday when some of these areas are auctioned off and a developer comes forward with a project, they would have to shape their development profile in line with those existing regulations that we have. Of course, we want to protect critical areas throughout the city. We're not deviating from that. Again, all this says is we're going to treat these areas as a unit and go forward in a master plan format. As you heard earlier during the study session, we had a presentation about the feasibility of a potential air park. I just want to clarify and amplify that that is a separate and independent exploration effort. It has its own decision points. That is not related to this. Whether that is realized or not, that does not negate the outcome. It does not negate the benefit of a holistic approach to planning. We would say that this is just prudent planning to look at things holistically and go through a master plan approach and how we want to identify these different attributes. The fourth item, as I mentioned, so state law leaves it up to each community to decide what a major amendment is. What's a major alteration to your land use base or your general plan? Now, most communities of our size, they vary, right? Every community can pick their own threshold. In cities of our size, they vary from 160 acres, 320 acres, 640 acres. City of Phoenix happens to be 3 square miles and 5 square miles. Currently, we are 80 acres. So during the general plan process, we had proposed that the major amendment threshold should be changed from 80 acres to 640. Now, just thinking about the process for conducting minor amendments and major amendments, I just want to make the point that the process is nearly indistinguishable, meaning that we still do a very comprehensive analysis on major and minor amendments. They still go through the same level of public outreach and notification to stakeholders. The only distinguishing elements are the vote that's required of council and one additional public hearing at the Planning Commission, but they're nearly indistinguishable. The proposed change that we made was really an attempt to make the process more streamlined and localized. Major amendments, not to get too far in the weeds, but they require action within 12 months of submittal. A minor amendment can be more organic, meaning we've had cases where we've had a lot of public interest on a project, and so rather than having that artificial 12-month period, it allows for a more organic process and for more meetings to occur over the process that it should require and the amount of public input that we should get in that. But nonetheless, through the amendment process, we have heard a lot of concerns about the changes, and we've elected to pull this item back and leave it the way it is. So we'll continue to process amendments with the current criteria. You can see that portion crossed out. What I do want to mention, so the one surviving element that we are proposed, and I would argue that it's very perfunctory, but it just says up here, and I know you can't read it, I'll read it for you, but it essentially says that if there's a realignment of any roadway on our circulation plan, or if we change the classification from a future roadway to a built roadway, we would do that administratively. All it's saying is it's just allowing us to do cleanups administratively and not having to come back to council to recognize a road that's already in place. That's all that does there. Mayor and Council, with my last slide, I just wanted to identify the upcoming dates here. So our next public touch point, we have a update that we're going to do with the Planning and Zoning Commission, talk to them about the process, what we've heard. We have a period, it's called 60-day review, where all agencies can comment on the general plan that happens to end June 19th. We do have public hearings that are proposed for Planning Commission, one on July 18th at Rio Vista, and one August 15th. Now, the one on July 18th is off-site, and that's because state law mandates that we have at least one off-site public hearing with Planning Commission. So that's why it's there. And then our plan is to bring the general plan package back to City Council for a September 17th public hearing and potential action. So with that, I can take any questions.
Councilor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chris, for the clarification. Can you describe a little bit how we're protecting our current and future open space going forward? And, you know, if this passes, does that align with our current plans for preserving open space?
Mayor, Vice Mayor Edwards, absolutely. So all this does is it places a boundary over a unit of geography that says, we're going to treat this area cohesively. What it doesn't do is it doesn't remove all the existing zoning regulations that we have that govern how a site will develop. So I mentioned earlier about our desert lands ordinance, the hillside ordinance, all those remain intact. Any future development would have to meet those requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Oh, Councilor Crawford, sorry. You were super fast.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate the presentation. Sorry for the slow trigger. You touched on this, but I just want to clarify. So what would happen if the council rejected the general plan amendment?
Mayor Pro Tem Crawford, that's a great question. Actually, that's a really good point that I wanted to make during my presentation, and that is, if the council rejected these amendments and we chose not to treat these areas as unified elements, one alternative could be is that land will eventually get auctioned off. It might get auctioned off in 50 acres, 100 acres at a time. It will get auctioned off, and we will see a series of disparate and disjointed rezones come to council without any unifying elements to it. That is a possible result if the general plan amendment was rejected.
So repeat that one more time so everybody understands that, because I think that's probably one of the most important parts of this. If the city does not do this.
Yes, Mayor, Council, so if we did not go forward, what that's saying is we're not going to treat these two areas, these two important areas, as cohesive, unified areas and do a master plan. What that says is we'll allow, state land will auction these properties off on their own timing, and we'll see developers come in with rezones that may or may not have any relationship to because we'll see tens of, with this amount of land, we'll see tens of rezones, and they may not have any relationship with one another.
So just so everybody understands that in layman's terms, either we define our future by doing this, and we actually take hold of this and actually work with state land, which we are. The MPG was already in process, but with the PIC, we either define this or some other developer will end up defining this for us. I would much rather have this in the hands of the people of Peoria than a developer from out of state or even out of country. Heaven forbid, and in the hands of the good citizens of Peoria, so we can actually define what our future truly is. So, thank you for your presentation.
Yeah.
Now we get to have fun with the Mystic. All right, so everybody's really going to enjoy this aspect of this, I think. So we are going to do, tonight we have several CFDs to run through as council. I would like to call the Mystic, there is a process, so I apologize for this. We're going to have to do this a few times. So it's going to be closing and opening, and then we'll get to other business of the city. So I would like to call the Mystic at Lake Pleasant Heights Community Facilities District Board meeting to order. Will the clerk please note the roll? We're not going to recall it. We will now move on to the consent agenda of the MCFD. All items listed on the consent agenda are routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion unless requested. We're actually going to just do a verbal vote. We're just going to do one verbal vote and be done with it. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda? Do I have a second? Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay.
I have Councilmember Finn.
Yes, Finn, Councilmember Finn and Councilmember Dunn.
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. And that is a 7-0, so thank you. And we will close there will be no further business. I hereby declare the CFD board meeting adjourned. We have to do this a few times, so I apologize. I would like to call the Vistancia North Community Facilities District Board meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll? I'm going to lose my voice doing this one. We will now move on to the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion unless requested for a removal, and I have received None. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda for the Vistancia North Community Facilities District Board meeting? Do I have a second? Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. 2 council members?
Aye. Aye.
Perfect. That is a 7-0. There will be no further business. I hereby declare the CFD board meeting adjourned. There's like 20 more of these, just so everybody, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Vistancia Community Facilities District Board meeting, I would like to call to order. Will the clerk please note the roll? We will now move on to the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion unless a request for removal has received prior approval. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. 2 council members?
Aye. Aye.
Perfect. That is a 7-0. There will be no further business. I hereby declare the CFD board meeting adjourned. You can't make this up tonight. Just I think you guys are testing me. You like put an extra one in here. Vistancia West Community. I would like to call the Vistancia West Community Facilities District Board meeting to order. Will the clerk please note the roll? We will now move on to the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion unless the request for removal has been received for prior approval. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. 2 council members?
Aye. Aye.
And it is 7-0. Thank you. There will be no further business. I hereby declare the CFD board meeting adjourned. We will now move on to the regular consent agenda. All items listed on the regular consent agenda are routine in nature and will be enacted in one motion unless request is for removal. I've received none. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
Do I have a second? Second. We will, all in favor say aye. 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 2 council members?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. That is a 7-0. Thank you very much. All right. I don't know why I banged the gavel, but that was just the process at this point. I got used to it. So we will now regular agenda. We will now move on to the regular agenda and to introduce new business. I now recognize City Manager Mr. Henry Darwin to introduce 34R. Whew.
So thank you, Mayor and Council. The first agenda item on the regular agenda is a grant from the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority of Arizona for advanced metering infrastructure implementation study and pilot program. This aligns with our water security goal and our innovative government goal. We have staff here today that present a grant opportunity for your approval that will allow the city to explore the technology of advanced metering. And this is a smart integrated system of customer billing meters and water conservation tools. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more from this. And so if you wouldn't mind, I don't know who's going in what order, so before you start, if you could just introduce yourself to Mayor and Council and the public, I'd appreciate it. I just know who's going to start. So please start. You can start.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Darwin. Good evening, Mayor and Council. With me tonight is Brett Fleck. He's our Water Resources Manager who oversees our conservation program. And Raymond Nelson, our Revenue Manager, who oversees the city's meters division. Item 34R is a request for approval to accept a grant from the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority of Arizona, otherwise known as WIFA, for the implementation of an advanced metering infrastructure feasibility study and pilot program. Let me start by giving a little background on the grant that we are receiving. The Water Conservation Grant Fund is administered through WIFA and provides up to $3 million in grant funding to eligible entities for the purpose of conserving Arizona's water supply. The grant requires a 25% city match, in this case amounting to $750,000. Eligible projects include those that reduce water overuse and provide infrastructure efficiency upgrades, which we feel fits nicely with the project that we've proposed for this grant. The proposed project focuses on advanced metering infrastructure technology, or AMI, which we feel helps the city advance our Water Security Council priority. Specifically, the grant will fund an ongoing study to determine the feasibility, costs, and benefit to implementing an AMI metering program here in Peoria. In addition, it will fund a pilot program to install and track the success of this technology. The scope of the pilot program will come with the completion of the study, so we don't yet know which specific AMI technology we'll be using or where they will be deployed. The grant requires us to complete all activities and expend the funding no later than March of 2026. With that, I'll let Raymond touch a little bit more on the ongoing feasibility study.
Thank you, Daniel. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As Daniel indicated, the study is not in completion, but very close to the finishing line. The study and the AMI efforts going forward will be a joint undertaking by Water Service and Finance Department. Water Services from the standpoint of understanding monitoring distribution, as well as promoting conservation, and Finance from the standpoint of meter reading, billing, and customer interaction. And I will be remiss if I didn't kind of mention the folks that work in these areas, our meter, billing, and customer service area. They're very attuned to streamlining processes and driving process improvement. And I think with the systems that we have in place, we're pushing up on the limits on what they can offer. So they themselves are looking forward to this AMI technology. The study is aimed at providing the city with unbiased guidance on the most efficient and cost-effective path forward. As a result, our consultant, GHD, is not affiliated with any water meter or software application company. GHD is tasked with providing a report that is in the best interest of the city and of its residents. GHD has spent the better part of the last year and a couple of months understanding our current metering system as well as the layout of the city, including topography, to identify alternatives and recommend the most favorable implementation strategy. The report is expected from GHD in the next couple of weeks, at which time we'll start having discussion and making recommendation about the pilot program. We estimate the setup phase of the pilot program will be shortly after that, and monitoring phase potentially taking place in the fourth quarter of calendar year 2024 and into the first and second quarter of 2025. With that, I'll turn it over to Brett to talk a little bit more about AMI technology.
Thanks, Raymond. So what is AMI exactly? Well, as Daniel noted, AMI stands for Advanced Metering Infrastructure. And to you and I, we might call that a smart meter. But to the utility, AMI is much more than that. It's the supporting technologies that make that real-time communication possible. It's metering, it's communication infrastructure, it's databases, it's analytics software, customer software. And it's really the next step in meter reading technology from what Peoria currently has, which is AMR, or automated meter reading. Many utilities have meter readers read each and every meter once per month. For Peoria, that would be about 63,000 meters. Peoria's meters are equipped with transmitters that can send a signal to a utility vehicle as it drives by, automatically collecting hundreds of meter reads at a time. Still, this only allows the city to read meters once per month because driving the entire city is expensive and time-consuming. AMI started taking off in the US in the early 2000s with electric utilities leading the way. By 2020, approximately half of all electric meters in the United States were AMI equipped. You likely have AMI installed in your house already if you receive electrical service from SRP or APS. Water utilities began implementing AMI in the late 2000s, and many are actually jumping from manual meter reading over AMR directly to AMI. They're skipping a technology. Glendale is an example of this, with their city council recently directing staff to solicit contractors for an AMI system jumping from manual meter reading that they're on right now. Tempe, Surprise, and recently Goodyear are now fully AMI for their water utility. Scottsdale and Mesa are installing AMI meters and systems right now, and Gilbert and Chandler are actively working on AMI systems. So it's kind of moving across the valley. With these utilities, moving to AMI, the potential benefits must be compelling, right? This is a big technological change. Though these benefits are not always obvious at first, even to the utility that's investing in them. Testimonials from utilities with AMI offer some insight. So some of the benefits include near real-time water information for customers that allow them to see how they actually use water, whether it's going to your landscape or to a shower or a washing machine or things like that. And this information has been shown to be an extremely powerful water conservation tool. When you know where you're using your water, you can do something about it. Then there's the automated customer leak alerts. Surprise, for example, reported that it had sent out 11,000 automatic leak alerts since its system came online in late 2019. Often it's leaking pools, toilets, sprinkler systems that you never notice, but they add up, often to a surprise bill and an understandably upset customer. Then there's improved customer service by giving those customers the power to better manage their water use and their bills while giving the utility the information to help resolve billing concerns more quickly, so improve customer service. The benefits on the utility side are equally appealing. Near real-time water use data can help us manage pressure across the system and detect leaking pipes, both of which reduce water loss. And as you know, water is not cheap. Utility costs can be more accurately and fairly allocated when you know how much each customer's peak usage contributes to capacity oversizing. When you build a water utility, you don't build for average use, you build for maximum use. So if you can reduce that peak, you can save money. Finally, customer-specific data can help Peoria improve conservation education and messaging if higher stages of Peoria's drought management plan become necessary. Currently, we're in a stage 1, but if someday we need to move beyond that, then this information will be very useful. Some of these benefits are easier to quantify, some are more difficult. It's really hard to know until you try it out, and that's where this pilot and this grant come into play.
Okay, thank you, Brett. At this time, staff is recommending that Mayor and Council approve the grant agreement with the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority of Arizona and authorize the city manager to accept $3 million in grant funding. Accepting the $3 million grant requires City Council approval to use $750,000 in unbudgeted funding from the Water Fund for the grant match. Staff recommends approval of the use of this funding, and the $750,000 cost will be taken into account in the FY 2025 water rate study. And finally, staff recommends approval of a budget amendment in the amount of $3,750,000 from the city's contingency appropriation. With that, we'd be happy to take any questions.
Councilor Crawford.
Thank you. You mentioned the automated alerts. How will that function? Do residents need to sign up for that? Would that be a phone call, email, text? How is that process, if you know?
Yeah, so at this stage of the process, it would be a little early to give you a definitive answer, but typically for other systems, the residents have to sign up for a portal to access the software that connects them with their data. And then you can get, whether you sign up for email or text alerts or things like that, the city can set parameters to say, hey, if you see usage over a certain amount for a certain duration, that likely indicates a leak, and then a notification would go out. But that's up to the customer to sign up, generally speaking.
Okay, I have one citizen, Angeline Wesson. Thank you.
There it is, time. I'm Angeli Wesson. I'm actually an Arizona native, so I know this area long before it was even a state, and so does my family and families before. When it comes to water, this isn't just a like or a feasibility, it's a need. It's an absolute survival need. Every single council member right now that I can see has a bottle of water or some type of liquid nearby. So when I see this ability to track in real time, this is helping in saving money, definitely the frustration if there is that leak to the pool. But I'm also bringing up that one of the biggest problems of this study is that it might not be recognizing the feasibility of an airport affecting our groundwater. We natives know this area as Hasayampa Basin. Even if you go with geography and geology, you'll see that there wasn't much native settlements in this area because we know that this whole area, it sinks. There's too much groundwater. That's why there was only waterways and building of agave. There wasn't homes. And if you go further out, yes, I heard earlier that the land can be developed. But why? If it gets developed, and it is for these toddlers to be able to put their storage space planes when there is Deer Valley Airport nearby, only 17 minutes away, and it affects our groundwater. It doesn't matter how real time we are measuring it if it's gone bad. I'm grateful that this is coming through. I also want to see and make sure that this study that is happening with GHD looks into making sure that it recognizes that a broken airstrip can affect our environment, can affect into the ground. And please, look further. If we do this, I really would appreciate it that we go further and see how much more it could even be able to sustain if there is the PIC developed, other developments, and then it would have to expand. How much would it be able to actually sustain? Again, the water is a need, not a want, pie in the sky idea of an airport.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am. Any other further questions? Thank you for your presentation. Council, do I have a motion to approve agenda item 34R?
So moved, Mayor.
Do I have a second? Please vote. Councilmember Dunn and Finn.
Aye. I vote yes.
Thank you. And it passes 7-0. Thank you. I now recognize City Manager Henry Darwin to introduce the next item on the agenda, 35R.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing on development impact fees, land use assumptions, and infrastructure improvement plan. As a reminder, this is a public hearing. There is no council action on this item. We're doing this in accordance with Arizona state statute that governs the development of impact fees. We're required to have, by that statute, we're required to hold a public hearing on the proposed land use assumptions and infrastructure improvement developed as part of our 2024 development impact fee update. We have before us this evening Deputy City Manager Mike Faust, who is going to present the details. Take it away, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Darwin, Mayor, council members. Glad to be back for this exciting topic. Last time we had 68 slides in 60 minutes. They gave me the slide deck for this one. It was 93 slides, so we've cut some out so we can try to get done a little quicker.
That's appreciated.
We're looking out for you. As Mr. Darwin had stated, this is part of a public hearing process as required by state law, where we will really highlight two things that were already covered inside of the study session back on April 16th. We'll drive them home today, which is land use assumptions, which is really about population growth and what's happening in the city over the next decade. We will also go through the infrastructure improvement plans, and that's the individual project list that we've gone through. And so rather than go through the whole deck with all the detailed math, we're really going to highlight today what changes have been made. But before I do that, I know as DCMs and directors, we get up here and we thank staff a lot, but I really want to say that here. This is not an easy process, and the team has done an absolutely fantastic job Anna Hudson has led that effort. The team in the development engineering under Dan Nissen have really engaged, and this is not an easy process. They are stuck in a very difficult place between the development community and the Home Builders Association, making sure that they're representing the community well. And we've done this in the most transparent way possible. I'll highlight some of those things as we go through. So just a reminder on what impact fee are. There are one-time costs that are charged at new development. So when you pull a permit for vertical construction, these impact fees are there. And it is a revenue-raising mechanism essentially to reimburse growth. So back to that adage that growth pays for growth. Again, all of this is governed by state law. City code also has some other provisions. So there are things permitted in state law that our city code further truncates. And we'll go through each of them as we work through the presentation. I'll highlight a couple of things in terms of adoption timeline. We've added a session since we last spoke. So we've highlighted when we were here on April 16th about 2 stakeholder meetings that occurred, one in February, one in April. We were last here on April 16th for a study session. Here tonight for the step 1 of the process. So as Manager Darwin had touched on, no action tonight. This is a public hearing. We're going to present facts. People who have come to speak will speak on behalf. We will be back for council action on June 11th. In that interim period between May 7th and June 11th, we will be refining all of these final numbers. And by that I mean there's still some back and forth going on between the city, the home builders, and the developers on what exactly projects really need to be in there, what doesn't need to be in there, what is growth related, what's not, and then finally hemming in the final maximum fee that can be charged. From that point, we're going to step away over the summer break, and we're adding another stakeholder meeting. So stakeholder meeting number 3 will occur sometime in July. That wasn't previously on the list, but we thought it important to go back to the home builders and the developers in the spirit of transparency to talk about the bringing forth the fee ordinance, which is slated here to come to you for another public hearing on August 20th. And so we thought that was just an important step inside of this equation. So again, we're going to break this conversation into 2 buckets, land use assumptions, and then we'll work through each of the impact fee types, talking and highlighting on the specific changes that have been made since we last met. These next 2 slides have not changed since we last met, ultimately saying 20% growth in the population over the next decade. So it's about 1.5% to 2% each year. Just by way of reminder, the first 5 years was based on actual data from pulling permits and analysis we've done here locally. Years 6 through 10 are from MAG projections. This is the non-residential growth, so this is really talking about retail and office and industrial. Again, the data is indicating a 20% growth, roughly 7,000 new jobs, about 3.3 million square feet of additional space added, where the previous assumptions was partially a city and MAG forecast. This one is solely based on a MAG forecast. Before we get into the individual impact fees, I just want to highlight from a methodology standpoint, there are 2 approaches that can be taken. One is really incremental growth, where you're analyzing a level of service. This city grows incrementally. Projects are defined to make sure that level of service is minimally maintained. Or a plan-based approach, which just says over a period of time, you have a list of projects, you're going to execute those projects. And then people who are smarter than me in the math go back, do that math, come back and say what's supported in terms of a fee structure. In the incremental expansion approach, you have fire, police, parks, excluding one of the park zones, and the transportation list of projects fits that bucket. On the plan-based approach is really the utilities, and the way that utilities is done is really scaled off of a cost per gallon, really starting with a 3/4 inch water meter as the baseline. That's the standard residential home uses a meter of that size. And then wastewater assumes that about 46% of what you pull in through your faucet gets returned through the sewer. Calculations are all done off that. So we'll work through each of the fee types. We're going to work from the points of least contention to the points of most contention. So rather than, try to do it in any other way, we'll say, hey, we have the most alignment within the stakeholder group in the city on this topic. And when we get to the last one, you'll see we still got some work to do. So the first one is police. So since we have been here last, there was really only one change. And it was when calculating the level of service, the shooting range was inside of that level of service, but by law, training cannot be included inside of that level of service. So when we back that out, you see that it had a $23 reduction on the impact fee. And again, by way of comparison, we usually use the single-family residential number just as the main talking point. The list of projects that we presented to you on 416 is still here. It remains unchanged. This includes public safety facility. It includes evidence facility. Again, the same mix of $54 million worth of projects over that 10-year period. Again, you saw a $23 reduction in the overall fee. Here's how it lines out. So a single-family home pulling a permit for construction would pay $1,036 in impact fee for police in this equation. You see a breakout for multifamily, mobile homes, and then you see for the non-residential components as well. Each of the tables we have include, or each of the impact fees slides will have this same table. I'm going to focus the talking points really on single-family residential homes, but if you have questions like Mr. Finn had last time on why mobile homes, we're happy to answer those questions too. By way of comparison, I'll highlight a few things here. Since we were last here on 416, several other municipalities, in fact, the majority of municipalities are going through this process right now. So you'll see some shifts where maybe Peoria was projecting to be the highest. There's been some movements. There may be an adopted fee for another jurisdiction. So you see Gilbert here is adopted. They voted on theirs. There is an implementation period that has to go, so they have to exhaust that. But right now, with Peoria's current fee at $677, what's proposed as a maximum fee, and again, by way of reminder, when it comes to the fee ordinance, the council always has the opportunity to support a number below the maximum. This is just what the maximum is supported mathematically. So you can see about fifth on the list relative to the comparable cities. Fire is up next. We only had a couple of minor changes here. Just to make it very clear, although the math was already supporting this, we did modify the infrastructure improvement plan list to clearly denote that Fire Station 9, which is the lake, which is currently 2,800 square foot, was forecasted to grow to 15,000. Just modified the way it was depicted to clearly show that it will be 15,000 feet. 81% of that is related to growth. That backs out the 2,800 square foot trailer that's currently up there now. There was a second item that was identified. You're not allowed to include maintenance and items inside of a IIP list. So there was a 1-ton truck inside of the maintenance list, one of the tables. That has been backed out. As such, there is a $2 reduction in the maximum supportable fee. Here's the list of projects. As we walk through and there are revisions made, the team did an excellent job of highlighting in yellow what has changed. And where there's one item here, you'll see as we get into subsequent slides, there's much more as we get to the more contentious topics later in the presentation. Again, $1,416 is the maximum supportable fee for single-family residential homes. By way of comparison, that does move the city down just a scotch, where our maximum is $1,416. Looks like about sixth in comparative group of cities. I know, this is invigorating stuff, isn't it? All right, shifting gears. So we'll leave transportation and parks to the end because they are the more pressing and challenging topics. But by way of utilities, on the water resource side, I just want to highlight where the previous police and fire were citywide zones. So any fee was collected, goes to the entire city. For each of the subsequent ones we'll talk about now, they're broken into zones. So for water resources, this is actual the tangible water product, not the treated water, but the actual water resource that we buy, is broken into two areas: on project, SRP, off project, and the CAP. There are no changes inside of this. The plan is the same. We did get a couple of questions with regards to how the city approached Bartlett Dam versus how other jurisdictions were doing it. We went back, looked at those options, decided the way that we contemplated was appropriate, and we decided to make no changes. So the fee remains at $1,232 for a single-family home, and you can see as some of the other jurisdictions have adopted or proposed their numbers have shifted up. Ours was remain constant, so we're on the lower side of this particular one. On the water side, this is the actual treatment of water, conveyance of potable water throughout the city. We break into 3 zones: the south, which is south of Bell Road; the north, which is north of Bell Road, east of the river; the west is west of the river. A handful of things we looked at here. So first, removed reclaimed water system upgrade project. Where this landed, it really was a development-specific project, or it was a maintenance-related item, so that was backed out because you can't include things that are development-specific, cannot be included in here, and items that are maintenance can't be included. We did update the cost of water for the impact fee studies. Adjusted the related percentages for the IWUMP, my favorite thing to say, the Integrated Water Utility Master Plan. We did decrease the percentage of this that's related to growth versus what's related to ongoing operations. And then ultimately, through these subtle changes, you see a slight reduction in the west area by $9, and there's just some slight alterations here. So I'll pull them up in the next one. Again, by way of summary, you see the removal of the Reclaimed Water System Upgrade Program. You see on the top row integrated, the IWUMP reduced as a percent related to growth to 39%. That makes a shift in the new gallons, a slight reduction in the overall cost. Still, when we look in the west service area, that is supporting a $6,905 impact fee, maximum supportable impact fee. That is a significant increase over what it currently is, but what we find across all jurisdictions is that the impact fees for water and wastewater are increasing significantly, as one would expect living in the desert. North service area, you see a number here, I can't read mine, 3263. That is a slight reduction, and part of that's because a lot of this system has been built out over the years. A lot of our growth is happening in the west, so it would seem only natural that that area is going to see additional costs, whereas parts of the city that are already built out might see reductions in those fees, as is apparent in the south, where a lot of this infrastructure already exists. So if somebody's pulling a permit to build there, you see a reduction in those areas, again, indicative of the fact that growth has already paid for that infrastructure. By way of comparison, a significant shift from what we showed last time. So when we looked at this particular impact fee before, you had, again, Peoria at the very high side. I think this is balanced out as more cities have progressed through the impact fee process. Lastly, on the utility side, before we get into a couple of more challenging topics, is wastewater. Wastewater is broken into 2 buckets, east of the river, west of the river, and that really coincides with the individual wastewater treatment facilities. No project changes on this list, but I do want to highlight one request we're still evaluating. The Home Builders Association, where they validated the fact that we have, let me back up. Previous IIP 2019, for whatever reason, a decision was made to treat 3/4-inch water meters and 1-inch water meters as the same impact fee. As we've looked at it on the water resources side, we said it's more water, right? It's a larger water meter. We're going to build off the 3/4, and you should pay slightly more for the 1-inch. Well, we've carried that same level of thinking on the wastewater side. And the home builder said, we get it on the water side. Would you please go back and look at the wastewater, because just because you're delivering more water to the property doesn't necessarily mean you're bringing more water back through the sewer system. We haven't made a decision one way or the other. I mean, we've got data that leads one direction, both directions, and so over the course of May, we'll make a final decision. But I wanted to highlight this item because I think the home builders have done a really good job. Home Builders Association's done a really good job of challenging us to defend why things are in the plan, why things are not in the plan, and we just want to acknowledge the fact that we're analyzing each and every request in a transparent way. From a wastewater standpoint, Again, you see a climb here, and one would expect it. The cost of treating wastewater is going up. We've seen this significantly across the valley. So the current maximum supportable fee is right around just shy of $9,000. In the west service area, which again is a climb, $3,100. And in the east, you see a number at $7,300. And again, this really focuses on three major projects. You have two wastewater treatment facility expansions, and then also the inclusion of advanced water purification project on the project list. When you add them together and drop a comparison in, you can see Surprise seeing some of the same challenges we're seeing. We've seen this and heard from other jurisdictions that this is a well-known challenge of funding these wastewater projects. This slide really adds all three of those together, because when you think about utilities, you have to think about the water resource itself, you have to talk about the water purification and the delivery to your home, and you have to talk about wastewater, which is collecting it through the sewer mains, running it through the wastewater treatment facility, and putting it back out as reclaimed water. So again, when we were here last time, the West sat at the top of the list, but you see Gilbert has come up, Surprise has come up. The North and the South still sit on the lower side, which we'd expect. That infrastructure has been built out over time. It's really only infill left to go, so it seems appropriate. Okay, so we're going to get into the two more contentious where we still got some work to do. Spirit of water, I'll drink a little. Parks. So on the park side, a couple of things to highlight here. We have more zones, and partly so we can carve them up and understand, because the neighborhood park system is really there to support a more localized community of 3 to 5 miles really from your home. So you got a zone 0, 0, 1 all the way through zone 4. This is consistent with what we spoke about on the 16th. Couple of changes we made here though. First is Saddleback Heights and Vistancia Special Use Park. We reduced the usable acreage. And so by that we might mean if there's 15 acres of park, but 3 acres of it is really drainage, right, where it runs for just storm drainage, and you can't use it as usable space. We try to match those up so that way the build numbers follow through well and the land purchase numbers follow through well. Reduce the park improvement and land costs for Saddleback Park. So we're really looking at, and this is still a point of open discussion, what should we be putting in the impact fee for the cost of the land itself? So it'll make a little more sense when I pull up the project list. We did address the growth-related percentage for the park and recreation plan. Much like the IWUMP, that whole plan is not really growth-related. This one has been decreased to 20% because we're saying 20% is growth-related, 80% is really about planning for the existing park system. You can see the individual zones and their adjustments, but there's some better slides that come next. So I love this slide because it really highlights a couple things. There's 55 acres of new parks contemplated inside of this, and I think it's fantastic. They're really focused on zones 2, 3, and 4. So you have the Alora Vita South Park in zone 2. There was no change proposed there. You've got a couple of parks in zone 3, no changes there. So when we see some adjustments, highlighting what was on the previous slide, Saddleback Heights Park was 13 usable acres, now it's showing 8. Again, it's important for 2 reasons, and it's important, one, as we calculate the individual land costs, I'm gonna touch on that in a second, and on the individual park improvement costs. So on the park improvement costs, someone might say, how have you decided what goes into it? Well, really, we have a sample size of 1. We use Liberty Park, right, in the Meadows as the basis for this number. And we've assumed it costs $1.1 million per acre to develop that. That includes under the ground, that includes on the ground, includes the vertical construction. That number, again, we have a sample size of 1. We're gonna go spend some more time in that. So as you might expect, the developers have said, we'd like to see that number go as much as we can, so the pool's as big as it can be. As you might imagine, the Home Builders Association has come back and said, hey, other jurisdictions have a lower number. So we know, because we went and looked, Surprise had a number of $650,000 per acre. So we went out and said, what did they get for their $650,000 versus what did we get for our 1.1? Because the parks in Peoria are really nice. And so the amenity package that's available inside of this is more than what some other jurisdictions are. And so it's tough to draw a one-for-one comparison. But we've made the commitment to go back and better study that, to see if that 1.1 million acres per acre comes down, maybe to something like Phoenix. And Phoenix is at 800,000. So we're going to evaluate that. So between now and the June 11th, actually, we've committed to ourselves to be done with this by 5/31, so we have full disclosure and transparency with the stakeholder group. We're going to investigate that. The second question we've posed back to the development community is, how much should we be planning for the actual land cost? So what's contemplated inside of this is $400,000 an acre, and although there are places around the city where $400,000 per acre is the going number, don't believe that that is a uniform or a universal number to use. So we're going back to each of the developers to understand what is land transacting in each of these particular areas. In Zone 2, say Alora Vita, Zone 4, which essentially is Saddleback Heights. So there are two big tasks left to do on this one, but the project list will remain the same. 55 acres of net new parks over the course of the next 10 years. In fact, most of them are loaded earlier than that. And the two actions saying reconcile the individual construction cost per acre and the actual cost of acreage per land. This summary table just walks through what the current fee is and what the proposed fee looks like, both for single family and multifamily. So you do see an increase. Now, I'll remind you again, when we came on the 16th, we highlighted why this number had changed so much. We talked about the costs and the usage of bond dollars in the last one. In this case, we're saying impact fee funded only, reimbursable through growth paying for growth. The other thing that really stands out here too is last time we came, the other cities hadn't adopted or proposed. So this chart wasn't up to date, but now we have this up-to-date information. Gilbert and Chandler, you see they've grown quite a bit. I do want to highlight, just in full transparency, that there's other dynamics in play with these jurisdictions. It's not just that they're building these massive parks. They have some other things to contend with. But at the end of the day, I think by way of comparison and in full transparency, we need to show you every jurisdiction and the alterations that are happening there. Okay, and the last one. We made good time this week, far better than our study session. I'm telling you, this is great. Huh? Are we going to take a stretch break? There's a lot of people back there, man. You don't realize, you feel it burning on your bald spot, but you don't realize it till you turn around. Good thing I got a haircut. Okay, transportation. Transportation breaks into 3 zones, the south, the central, and the north. If you recall, last time we were here, we said, hey, this is a hot topic situation. We had some math that didn't quite make sense to us. Come to find out, we found some holes in the math, and so ultimately there is a pretty significant shift inside of this number, because as we looked at the models, found some challenges, got it corrected, and I think now we're dealing with an apples for apples comparison. Again, this map just, there are no impact fees charged for roads in the south. All those roads are built, so there are no projects, thus no impact fee generated. So this map zooms in specifically in the central zone and the north zone and highlights the roads that are contemplated. So the color key that's here, and it's a little tough to see for everybody in the back, it's in the actual published report. When you see a green line that's saying, hey, that road doesn't exist, it's going from 0 to 2 lanes. If it's orange, it doesn't exist, it's going straight from 0 to 4. Or if you see the red or yellow, those are expansions of existing roadways. So this just highlights those items. But we do have a project list for each of them. We're going to start with, in particular here, the central zone. So again, I do want to highlight just a couple things. We did find some challenges inside of the mathematical model. They have been corrected, so that contributed to the growth. But as we spoke about on April 16th, in the 2019 IIP, not all the cost components to build the roads were in the numbers. So transparently, we have committed, we said it to the developers, and we have been into the home builders and to you as council members, we are going to make sure that all the costs are contemplated inside of the projects. So that way, when a fee ordinance comes back to you folks for consideration, you're seeing the truth of the matter and you can make a decision. You want to support a maximum fee or you want to support something less than that, at least you know you're making a fully informed decision. The second thing I want to highlight is we talked about levels of service, and I'm not going to get into vehicle miles traveled versus vehicle mile capacity. It's just going to be, But at the end of the day, we had a lot of conversation because there was an ask from the development community to say, hey, we went in with a ratio of 2. There was a request to push it up to 3, when we know in the 2019 study it was 1.5. Ultimately, we've decided to stay at 2 and stick with the numbers as they are, because we think that's consistent with where we want to be longer term, and we think that there's enough math to support here to give you capacity to make a fully informed decision. I'm going to skip this slide and go to the next one because I think it highlights the amount of work that the team has done. So all of the yellow denotes changes since the last time we presented. Now, in fairness, we sent this to the developers and the home builders. We've been here for a while. We sent it somewhere around noon today. So we did phone calls, we talked to them, we answered some anxious, responsive phone calls for the people who didn't read their emails. And lo and behold, we're gonna come back to them and have conversations. So the message I wanna send now to you and to the people staring at my bald spot is the fact that we're gonna come back and have secondary conversations to make sure that we find alignment before we come here on June 11th. That doesn't mean we're all gonna agree, but at least we can support the decisions that we had and why that's there. So again, I'll highlight just a couple of things here. Lake Pleasant Parkway, we altered the growth percentage number. That was 50%, it went up to 70. Dixoletta, 96th Avenue, it was concluded. So just to mind you, you come out of Paloma Park and you go straight across, that's Dixoletta. You drive that down where Smartopia would be, we said, hey, you know what, that road is gonna be primarily for that local development, so it shouldn't be 100% growth related. Lone Mountain Parkway, which is essentially West Wing coming across Lake Pleasant Parkway, we said, hey, you know what, that is really growth related and we need to think about it that way. 67th Avenue and Happy Valley to Pinnacle Peak. So this is the drainage project east of CCV, south of Happy Valley Road. This had a much smaller impact fee number. The team ultimately decided that road's got to get wider, right? If you drive there, that road's got to get wider. There's more of a growth component there. We did remove this segment of Pinnacle Peak. It is currently functioning. Although it's built out in that area, it made no sense to leave it there because we didn't think it was going to build, so we took it back out. And then these 3 traffic signals. So the traffic signal at Joe Max and Alora Vita, this is the 72nd Avenue alignment. This is one we're currently studying right now because there was an accident there not too long ago. This number was altered down because the scope slightly changed and there was an in lieu payment, meaning the home developer, Pulte in this case, had actually put cash in the bank account to contribute towards that signal. So as we study it and once it's warranted, this $900,000 deals with the capacity component that remains. The other 2 traffic signals that were there were pulled off the list because they were deemed to be development specific, right? So if a project is development specific, the development should pay for it. But at the end of the day, in the central zone, you're still talking about $89 million worth of road projects, creating 208,000 miles of capacity to the system. Pretty significant jump here though. So by way, and I'll hold that comment for a second, I'll come back to it. 10,979. Partly this is because as we've gone back through the financial models, ultimately concluded there was some issues with the model that has been remedied. This number last time we talked to you was probably about 8,000. So it has gone up. I do think there's some opportunity to consider, should it be that high? Will all these roads build out? So there's a point of discussion to balance the narrative between the home builders and the developers. On the north, again, it's an exhaustive list, so I'm gonna switch gears here real quick. That's an eye chart and a half, good Lord. Couple of things to highlight in the first few rows. There is a section of road that was contemplated inside of the original plan that we wanted to see because we thought it would help circulation. So go way north, the parts of the city that aren't built yet, Saddleback Heights, you go up over the mountain out of Estancia through the expansion of Trilogy. Up over the hill, there's a roadway alignment that's contemplated out there called Galvin. We were really viewing that as an ability to connect east and west from Estancia to El Mirage. Well, in talking to the developers, it doesn't look like the timeline of that is going to play out the way that we wanted it to. So because that timeline's not going to play out the way we hoped it would, we said, hey, it shouldn't be in the impact fee plan then. If it's going to play out in the next 5 years, we're going to put it in. If they say it's not going to play out, we're going to back it out. So what you saw here was 2 things. That Galvin alignment cut short. So it went from a mile long to say 0.8. And then the second portion is El Mirage. Really, this is pretty far up El Mirage from Caterpillar Tank Wash, if you know where that is. I had never seen it till the other day, been out there. It was supposed to connect with Galvin, so we backed that down just a little bit. Sliding down the paper, you see some alterations to El Mirage Road, so that 28251 North El Mirage, that's pretty much from the fire station south. That was really about growth from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, and we're saying some of that is growth related and it should be picked up as growth related. One that's still open for debate and discussed with the development community is the Jomax roadway. So Jomax does exist from El Mirage, just north of the Beardsley Canal, from El Mirage to about 126, where we just put in the dead end treatments out there that the people have already cut the locks and started driving through. So that's glorious. So this particular stretch of road, there's some debate on what is developer responsibility, what is not. I feel very comfortable that the team's made an appropriate decision that 126, the Dicehart, is clearly developer related. So when that desert builds out, that should be on the developer to construct and doesn't belong here. But we do have to have an open conversation about the El Mirage to Jomax from El Mirage to 126 and that expansion. There's some discussion in the development agreement with the developer that has to be hashed out there. And then on the signals, where originally they were put in, after further review, the team felt that they were development specific, thus should come out of the plan. Again, what we're talking about, if you live up in this area, you're still talking about $194 million worth of road projects, you know, with a pretty sizable, 480,000 vehicle miles capacity, or that's 750. My old eyes are getting bad. So again, this is a sizable jump. So last time we were here, I remember sitting in the same seat and I said, we don't really know why the number went down, because it was at that 73 number and it dropped to like 6,700. And we said, that doesn't make sense. The combination of the projects, the combination of putting the cost in, and we worked very diligently to make sure the cut and fill was in there, the storm drains were in there. The development engineering team put in a lot of work to make sure those estimates were accurate, make sure developer feedback was there, and then reviewing the cost model, essentially that number drove up. It is important to note, though, from a road standpoint, Peoria is on the high side of roads. We have been historically on the high side of roads. This number further pushes that up, and I think that is a point of discussion as we get towards the fee ordinance. Specifically, that study session we added in July, we added it to take this conversation, because that is a big number. So we were already high as a jurisdiction. You see some of the other jurisdictions have come up. You can support a number that high, but we have to have another healthy debate amongst the developers and the home builders to see exactly where it lands. When you add it all together, here's how it looks. You got parks and police and fire and roads for this non-utility number. You've got the utility system with a 3/4 inch comparison. Again, at water resources, water and wastewater, when you add it all together, what that means is if you're building a house in zone 4, when this would be enacted, if all of these maximum fees were delivered, you would have an impact fee of $31,000 to pull the permit on that house. So as a point of comparison, and you talk about eye charts, this gets really big. You see Gilbert, by way of comparison, is currently at $35,000. Again, the roads number pushes this up. So I think there's some points for discussion there. Those roadways are expensive to construct, and we need to understand that. I think it is also important to highlight, and I'm sure the home builders will touch on this, Peoria's approach to roads and road impact fees is, we're very involved in that process. And as such, I think we're playing in the middle of this financial transaction between the home builders and the developers, maybe more than we need to in the long term. But as I've shared with some people today, we will evaluate whether the city should be that middle person to this magnitude. We just can't do it today. By the time we hit 2029 impact fee, we can reassess that situation. And as long as this process starts, we're gonna start that in probably January. So, that was a joke, sorry. So with that being said, I think there's still some open debate here that's got to be had, but we feel really good about the police and fire number. The utility numbers all look good. There doesn't seem to be a ton of angst amongst the stakeholder groups. I think there'll be some project-specific items. On the park side, I think the conversation's more on us to dissect the land, the cost of land, the cost of construct. We'll figure that one out. And on the transportation side, it's really, those numbers are big, but the cost to construct roads up there in that part of the city is very expensive. And as such, there's some decisions that are gonna have to be made. Just to highlight one final time, we're here as a public hearing tonight. There will be no action, but we'll take public comment. We'll be back. We will reconcile all of these details offline with the stakeholder community. We'll be back on June 11th for an actual council action. We've added this stakeholder meeting. We'll get some actual dates on the calendar for the month of July. Back for a public hearing specifically on the fee component in August. Council action in October, and then 75 days later, they will be finalized.
Council, any questions?
Somebody just said, please, no.
I think I heard that throughout the entire group, actually.
Yeah, I took the over on 10-10.
I think you're good right now. I think you might be able to take a break. So,
Okay, I'll wait.
I'm going to call on Mr. James Ashley. How you doing, sir?
Doing well, thank you very much.
Thank
Mayor
you.
Beck, members of the council, I'm here on behalf of the Home Builders Association of Central Arizona. I want to thank Mike for that synopsis. That was a good whirlwind tour and very informative for everyone in attendance here. Our members, we represent the single-family construction industry and all the related trades. And the members employ tens of thousands of workers throughout the state and actually invest hundreds of millions of dollars annually right here in Peoria. Wanted to thank staff. I wanted to thank staff for the communication and accessibility through this process. And I also want to thank Mike and the team for the responsiveness through this ongoing process as it continues. On behalf of our members, we do have continuing concerns about this proposal. We had an April 12th letter where we raised many of these concerns and questions, and we appreciate that some of those items have been starting to be addressed. And while there were some appropriate recent revisions in the initial round of updates, there were some other changes, as you heard, that drove the totals even higher, drove them significantly higher. And that's related to the streets fee. And as Mike alluded, Peoria is a clear outlier on the size and the approach to the streets fee, and fees that, as you saw, are double the next highest city that just updated their fees. And also higher than all jurisdictions, which includes rapidly growing cities as well. These rapidly growing cities are adding more people than Peoria over the next 10 years, including cases where growing cities are projected to add twice the number of people than Peoria. And those cities, they also have challenges. They have geographic challenges, and they also have challenges, but they're working to meet their growth needs successfully. I look forward to ongoing discussions with staff as we work through the process and also work through a couple of examples. Just two examples that we noticed today in terms of Lake Pleasant Parkway between SR 74 and Loop 303. Designation was allocated at 50% attributable to growth. We had some concerns about the 50%, since that is a significant thoroughfare that will attract a lot of traffic up and down the Loop 303 corridors and access to Lake Pleasant itself. And that increased to a 70% attributable nature to growth. And that's a $9 million increase that will be tacked onto the fees. Another quick example, Lone Mountain Parkway between 96th Avenue and Lake Pleasant Parkway. That went from 10% attributable to growth in the longstanding draft that had been out there as a part of the 18-month process of really diving deep and understanding and determining these numbers. It went from 10% to 100% attributable to growth. That was a significant change, and that's a $10 million increase. So we'll look forward to those ongoing conversations as we move forward on that and other items as well. The current proposal, it'll have the effect of significantly increasing home prices. Builders know the types of buyers in their community, and they also know the types of buyers in the segment that will be priced out from those communities. And this is a burden not only on Peoria's new residents, but it's a burden on existing residents as well. A family is downsizing, the kids are out of the house, they love living in Peoria, and they like the idea of moving to a new home community. They'll be impacted by this. A growing family, they need more space, they need more room. they're looking forward to staying in Peoria and moving into a new home community, they'll also be paying these fees. Aside from the home building industry, I will wrap up, Mayor. Aside from the home building industry, you're starting a small business, a brick and mortar, you're going to pay these fees. But we do understand the pressure on a growing city and the role of reasonable impact fees. We understand the need and the role. And we're looking forward to achieving a plan that works to address the city's needs directly related to growth, and a plan that works, and a plan that is balanced for the home builders investing heavily in Peoria. And Mayor, I'd like to thank you and the council and everyone for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Chris Reed.
Good evening, Mayor Beck and members of the council. Thank you for your time this evening. I also would like to thank staff. Mike mentioned they've just done a fantastic job of diving deep and understanding all the nuances of all these costs that go into the infrastructure that serves this great city. It's been a process that we're still working through, but I've just never seen such a hardworking group to get us where we need to be. I'm with Land Resources. I've been working on the Vistancia project for close to 20 years now. So I have a very vested interest in North Peoria. The higher fees that are being shown in this report are simply tied to a few things. One is the cost inflation escalation that's happened recently that people have felt in a number of places, the great facilities that are offered in the city of Peoria, and then the topography. When you get up to the northern region, especially where the fees are the highest, if anyone hasn't been out there, welcome any tour, where you can see that the costs to actually install roadways is the biggest point of contention, is astronomical as you go through the mountainous areas. Impact fees are the best nexus for development to pay for developments. And I know that is council's interest, is that development pays its way. The way we see it, if there's any reduction or backing off of that maximum fee, what you're doing is you're choosing to have those dollars come from somewhere else. And so the list of projects that you've seen, some are constructed by developers, some are constructed by the city. And so we're in this together where if development's not going to pay for development through impact fees, that'll come out of pockets of developers, and then also come out of the pockets of the city, where I think it was mentioned in the study session, that's going to be through bond issuances or things of that nature that are going to impact existing residents, as opposed to the impact that the new building permits are being pulled, being paid for in that way. Another thing I'd like to bring up before I conclude is that this is done every 5 years. So as we're looking at the extensive cost escalation that has occurred recently, we see that continuing to happen. We see costs continuing to push up. And so even when you're looking at costs that are a little bit high and they feel high because it's increased from the last updates, it's going to be in the rearview mirror before these become into effect. So I just, again, want to encourage council to adopt the maximum fees that are supportable. Staff's done a great job of determining what it costs to build these improvements, what the impact of each incremental development is going to create. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Council, any questions whatsoever? No? So it sounds like you guys have some great meetings. Actually, sounds like you guys have a fairly good relationship between the home builders and developers. I'm trying to actually work with the city staff on that without using boxing gloves, it sounds like. So, yeah, thank you for all of your efforts. Thank you for staff's efforts in this. It sounds like it takes 5 years to actually get this done. So, with that, I will now close the public. We're going to do this again. I will now close the public hearing. And we are going to take a 5-minute recess. Fair? All right. All right, thank you. Sounds like everybody got some energy up on that one. That's great. All right, so next is 36R, Capital Improvement Program. I now turn this over and recognize City Manager Henry Darwin.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, as you know, preparing and managing our capital improvement program is a major undertaking and an important part of our municipal budgeting and future planning. We have this evening, we have our Chief Financial Officer, Sean Kendall. Looks like we have our Deputy Finance and Budget Director, Peter Christensen, and our Budget Manager, Ben Butler, here to make our presentation. I'm assuming, Sean, you're starting.
I am, very briefly.
Okay. And so I'll turn it over to you anyway.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Darwin, Mayor, Council. We're pleased to be here tonight to present the 10-year capital improvement program. And just a reminder on this, that this is our 10-year plan that we're doing on this. So I'm going to turn it over to Ben, and he's going to walk through that program, and then we'll open it up for questions.
All right. Tonight is the first of 3 consecutive meetings required by state statute to adopt the FY 2025 budget. In addition, our principles of sound financial management that were adopted by council require us to adopt a balanced 10-year capital improvement plan along with the tentative FY 2025 budget. So in summary, we will first present for your consideration and adoption the 10-year CIP, and then we will present for your consideration and adoption the tentative FY 2025 budget. Updating the 10-year CIP is a very extensive process that begins in the summer with our department staff identifying projects and estimating costs, progresses into the fall with fund balancing, and culminates in the spring with our budget study sessions. Department staff do their best to identify the most important projects. They also coordinate the scope and timing of each project. In our March budget study session, Deputy City Manager Mike Faust went into great detail about the projects in the 10-year CIP. Tonight, my presentation will be more of a summary at a high level. The 10-year CIP totals $1.4 billion, which is a 25% increase over the previous CIP. Most of this growth is due to us adding additional utility projects, such as the Bartlett Dam expansion, the Advanced Water Purification Treatment Plant, and the Jomex Water Reclamation Facility expansion. Looking at this table above, you see that water and wastewater are about 50% of the CIP, showing the city's continued commitment to water security. Streets is 19%, and public safety is 8%. Drainage, economic development, operational facilities, traffic control, and parks and recreation make up the remaining 20% of the capital improvement program. There are dozens of funding sources that go into the 10-year CIP, and I think that our CIP makes a nice balance between funding with pay-as-you-go funding, which is cash, and debt financing. The largest source of funding for the 10-year CIP is pay-as-you-go funding, including outside sources, transportation sales tax and HERF, utility revenue, and the general fund. The second largest funding source is debt at 43%, which includes general obligation bonds, revenue bonds, and excise tax debt. Debt is an important tool as it allows us to achieve intergenerational equity among taxpayers, spreading the cost of the project across the life of the project or the facility itself. Debt also allows us to pay for projects as they are needed, as opposed to waiting until we have sufficient cash on hand. The final funding source are impact fees at 8% of our CIP. And these fees, as Mike Faust went into great detail in his last presentation, are dedicated towards expansion-related projects. We've made a few changes to the CIP. These changes were discussed in the March budget study session, as well as in a subsequent email to all city council members. Looking at the far left, you see that CS 258 and EN 646 were combined. EN 777 and EN 794 were removed. Project Grandview Half Street Improvements was advanced to FY25 and increased by $1.8 million. And Cedar Brook frontage was advanced 1 year. Again, tonight, we are asking for your consideration and adoption of the 10-year capital improvement plan for fiscal years FY 2025 to FY 34. And with that, we are available for any questions you may have.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Thank you, Mayor. Ben, staff, thank you so much for putting together the CIP 1.4 billion. Thanks for keeping the presentation short because it's getting late. No, quick question. On the CIP for FY25, there's 4.8 million for the purchase of the land of a potential air park. And when I was reading in the CIP, I think it's on, I apologize, page 2 and 39 of the CIP, it says it's 10% down, and then there's about 2.8 million a year for the foreseeable future for the interest. So my question is, what is the total purchase price of the land for the potential airport in the CIP?
Mayor, Councilmember Schaefer, we're going to phone a friend on this one and call Mike Faust up for some more entertaining debate.
We're not going to debate this one. Mayor, Councilmember Schaefer, thanks for the question. So, again, we've talked a lot about economic development tonight, and this particular is an economic development strategy. So when we did the math, ultimately we contemplated a 500 auctioning and participating in an auction on a 500-acre parcel of land at $2 a square foot, which is essentially $86,000 per acre times 500 acres is $43 million. 10%. Be roughly $48 million, right? 10% down would be $4.8 million. $2.8 million each year thereafter contemplates a 6.5% interest rate applied to the balance of that loan for each successive year.
Mike, thank you for clarifying that. So just quick question. I would assume since we're doing 10% down, it would just be an annual operational expense till that 48 million is paid off. Is that correct, or would there be additional capital dollars later?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Schaefer, so the way that we've contemplated for this estimate is you look at CIP 41 in your book. Again, the ongoing operational cost at $2.8 million is contemplated that way, I think funded through, they'll have to speak to the funding mechanism for that particular one, but again, 6.5% on that. Now, the way that was just the estimates we had to make sure we baked in the numbers properly in a transparent way inside of the CIP.
Thank you, Mike. Okay.
If anyone questioned Mr. Faust's math skills, I think everybody has been able to prove that tonight. So your high school math teacher is very impressed. Any other questions from council? Ms. Peggy Jacobs? Mr. Phil Chisholm? Phil Chisholm? Ms. Lori Bango?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am Lori Bango. I'm an Arizona native and 20-year resident of Peoria. Currently live in the Willow District and used to reside in Mesquite. Just wanted to thank the Mayor and Council and the amazing staff who have worked so hard to make Peoria the best place on earth. I absolutely love that. I love the new tagline, Peoria is the place. And that's because of you and the Mayor's vision to make Peoria and to move Peoria forward with a focus on public safety, economic development, and infrastructure. It was clear from the report of the Assistant City Manager, Rick Boss, that there are two choices, economic development or raising taxes. Who doesn't want low taxes and a thriving economy? I'm very concerned with the level of misinformation, rumors, and lies that are circulating on social media, such as defunding Paloma Park, which was never funded or promised in the first place, or that low-flying commercial jets will be flying over homes, or that Vistancia will become an ugly industrial area. Thank you for conducting the feasibility studies and being so transparent. I loved his quote that a fully informed council provides fully informed decisions. So thank you for the council's transparency and analysis and communication and all the work that goes behind this 10-year plan. The people elected Mayor Beck because of his positive and bright vision for the future of Peoria.
Can you pause for 1 second?
Of course.
So this is my rule. If somebody's at the podium, we are not doing this. We're not acting like 12 and 13-year-old kids in here. So we will be respectful for every single person that comes to the podium, whether it's your time to speak or not, and that is the way we will run this meeting. If not, you are welcome to leave. Fair? Please continue.
Thank you, Mayor. I have full confidence in the staff and the city managers conducting thorough studies and doing their due diligence and keeping the promise of all of Peoria to treat all areas equally and not giving partiality to a certain district. This is an administration of commitments. Commitments made, commitments kept, including bringing jobs, new restaurants and shopping, revitalizing downtown Peoria, strengthening our water infrastructure, and imploring great opportunities to keep taxes low and preserve our city's beauty. I implore all of you to pass Resolution 2024-31 and 32 and making Peoria the best place in the state to live. Thank you. I'm just trying to read my chicken scratch as I was sitting there writing these notes. So thank you so much for your patience, and thank you all so much for your amazing work for our great city. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am. Now, in a respectful nature, I'm going to lay down some groundwork for this. Not everybody is going to agree with every single commenter, and I expect that. Not everybody is going to agree with me or another council member that's on this dais, and I expect that. That's our right to be able to do that, but we are not going to be disrespectful to other citizens as they speak. Fair? Thank you. With that, do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Please vote.
Councilmember Finn and Dunn.
The two council members on the phone, please.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. And it passes 6-1. Thank you.
Mayor, the next item on the agenda is agenda item number 37. It's for the fiscal year 2025 tentative budget. The tentative budget represents a major policy and financial planning tool for the city. And it looks like the same group of gentlemen are going to remain at the desk. And Sean, am I handing it over to you to get us started?
Thank you, Mr. Darwin. Yes, we're here for consideration of item 37R now. This is the tentative budget, and Ben will talk a little bit more about this, but the important part of the tentative budget is this sets our maximum spending level. We'll come back in a couple of weeks for approval of the actual budget, but this does set the maximum spending level. So Ben, if you want to take it from here.
Thank you, Sean. Let me reiterate some main points that were made at the budget study session about the tentative budget. The tentative budget is a structurally balanced budget, which means that our ongoing revenues equal our ongoing expenditures. The tentative budget reflects council priorities. The tentative budget includes no tax rate increases. Given the significant amount of inflation, the tentative budget funds a number of supplementals related to inflation, such as the minimum wage increase, electricity, vehicle costs, and so on. And the tentative budget is consistent with the council adopted principles of sound financial management. The tentative budget totals $995 million. The largest component of the tentative budget is the operating budget at $458 million, or 46%. We will discuss the operating budget in great detail on the next slide. The next largest component is the capital budget at $432 million, or 44%. Debt service remains at 5%, and we remain within our constitutional debt limitation for general obligation bonds. And we have set aside 5% of the budget for contingency, which is spending authority for unknown expenses. So back to the operating budget. The operating budget is increasing by 10% over the prior year, and this slide shows the main reasons for that 10% increase. The largest component of the operating budget is personnel, and this budget includes cost of living adjustments and merit increases for our various labor groups, as well as our non-represented employees. This budget also includes a health insurance increase of 8.6%. This is higher than we have seen in the past, but not unexpected given the large amount of inflation we have seen for several years. Speaking of inflation, the budget funds $6.8 million in supplementals related to inflation. At the March budget study session, we went through a number of the operating supplementals in great detail, so I will just summarize them here. The budget funds $30.1 million in one-time supplementals and $11.6 million in ongoing supplementals. The budget also adds 41 new positions, bringing the total number of full-time equivalent positions at the city to 1,430.5. Looking at the far right column, you see that most of these positions are for public safety. 15 of the 17 positions for fire medical are related to the Joint Public Safety Facility at Vistancia and have been planned for several years. We've made a few changes to the operating budget, and again, these changes were mostly discussed at the budget study session in March and then in a subsequent email that was sent to all city council members. We reduced the carryover for the aviation unit to a more accurate figure. We added some contract positions for the city attorney's office as well as some other resources. We added a contract position for the planning department and a reclassification for the budget office. We also made some changes to the FY25 capital budget, but we've discussed those in our last presentation, so I won't belabor the point here. Finally, we are asking tonight for your consideration and adoption of the tentative FY 2025 budget that sets a maximum appropriation of $995 million, and with that, we are available for questions.
Councilor Schaefer.
Thank you, Mayor. Man, once again, another great job. Thank you. I really like that there's no new tax increase, and I love that we have 17 new positions for fire medical and 14 positions for police. Mayor, can we ask Chief Interary? I just want to ask Chief Interary and Chief Bernard, make sure that there's nothing else that they need. Is that okay, Mayor?
Yes, you can.
Thank you, sir. So, Chief Bernard, Chief Interary, the 17 fire medical and the 14 police, is that meet fire medical and police staffing, I guess? Sorry to throw a curveball.
Mayor Beck, Councilman Schaefer, thanks for the question. We're definitely on the right track. We've still got some more work to do, but we are very excited with this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Schaefer, again, as stated by Chief Bernard, we are moving in the right direction. Looking forward to the future, and things are bright right now.
Sounds good. Okay. Thank you, Chiefs. Mayor, thanks.
I'm glad both of you got new haircuts just for this video.
Matching new haircuts.
They're, like you guys went to the same barber together, right? Who said fire and police didn't get along? Oh, and a hug. That's even better. Chief's like, don't touch him. All right. Mr. David, I'm sorry, Councilmember Patena. I apologize.
Could you go back to the pie chart, please? I just have a point of clarification. So the contingency, it's my understanding that that can be used for one-time items, but not ongoing items, correct?
Mayor and Councilmember Patena, it could be used, yes, mostly for one-time items.
Okay. No ongoing programming, though?
Mayor and Councilmember Patena, so sometimes we've done mid-year adjustments where we've added positions mid-year through the years, and we have used contingency for that purpose.
Okay.
So we mostly use it for And contingency is tricky, right? Because it's like writing a check. It's spending authority. So we have to add budget funding behind that check. So to answer your question, it can be used for one-time items and ongoing items as long as we have the funding to go along with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. With no other questions from council, Mr. David Bell.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I just wanted to come up here and speak for a couple minutes. I just wanted to speak in, basically saying that I agree with the budget. And I just want to say thank you guys to all the work that you guys put into this. I know it takes a lot of time. You know, I'm a business owner in Peoria myself. I've lived in Peoria, and I've grown up in Peoria. I'm a resident of, or a native of Arizona. So I've done a lot of work in Peoria and done a lot of stuff with Peoria, with fire and police. So I know that this budget is very important to, help with adding officers and, more firefighters. And I appreciate you guys coming in here and working together on this. And I just wanted to kind of, say thank you to you guys, and then just let you guys know that, it's awesome too that there's not going to be any new taxes based on the budget, and that makes it great for Peoria businesses like myself. And just wanted to tell you guys thank you and lend my support for the budget. So hopefully you guys can pass this and help out, all of the employees for Peoria and all of the police and fire. So thank you guys.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for everything you do in Peoria as well. So 1,750 kids got gifts because of your program this last year. So thank you for doing what you do. Mr. Jim Keller.
Good day, Mayor Jason Beck and the board. My name is Jim Keller. I have lived in Peoria for 31 years, and I have seen a lot of growth in Peoria. It's been mostly primary in housing, residential areas with some small businesses. And that obviously contributed to 83% of the people having to communicate for skilled jobs. I was one of those 83%. I had to drive thousands of miles to have my career outside of Peoria. So my comment is the plan here for the full year 2025 is taking a tremendous amount of vision, planning, detail work to put together the growth in Peoria for good large businesses, for employment, to help keep the economic growth in the city of Peoria. And I fully support that full year 2025 budget, which is self-sustaining and replaying the money. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Mr. Joe Clure.
It's not too far from morning. My name is Joe Clure. I'm a Vistancia resident. And I just wanted to say that I appreciate this budget because it does something that hasn't been done probably in the last decade, and that is make public safety a priority. The addition of the 17 firefighters and the 14 police officers is greatly needed, and like the fire chief said, we're headed in the right direction, but we still have a lot of work to do. So with that, I think the budget is exactly where it should be, particularly with regards to fire. I know that when I asked the fire chief about when the last time we had a fire station built in Peoria, he said it was 12 years ago. To me, that's unconscionable because we certainly have had a little bit of population growth in the past 12 years, and to not have a fire station to keep up with that growth, I think is irresponsible. I think that we're finally making public safety a priority. As you all know, retired Phoenix police officer, 34 years. I did the math on our police staffing. We were the lowest in the West Valley. Even with these additional 14 officers, we're still well behind the rest of our peer cities. We probably need at least another 20, 25 officers to get in the 1,000 residents, 1.3 police officers to 1,000 residents ratio. So hopefully next year our budget will look something similar to this. I also wanted to just make a comment on the capital improvements with regards to the purchase of the land from the State Department. I think that is $48 million, may sound like a lot of money, but when you actually look at what the return on that investment will be with regards to revenue growth, and revenue is in government just simply means taxes, because the government really doesn't have any revenue. They just do taxes. It's important to look at the value. We know two things. We needed economic drivers, which is what you ran on, to fund all the things that we want to do in the future. And I think we're headed in that direction with the master plan that we're looking to put together, and I support it 100%. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Any other comments from council? So I'm going to make a couple comments on this real quickly. The staff has put a tremendous amount of work into this, and it is greatly, greatly appreciated. I've been in the meetings, I've seen it, and a lot of people know that one of my love languages, my wife would say, is financial modeling. So I think Sean and I speak that same love language. So we have done a tremendous amount of work on this. The city has two options, really three. We can either raise taxes, we can drive economic development, or we can actually cut services. We're not cutting services, we're not raising taxes, we're driving economic development, and that is what this plan does. Everyone, I believe, on the dais believes that what the last speaker said about fire and police. 12 years for a fire station has been way too long. I would plan on more. And I would plan on having we already have some of the best police officers and firefighters in the valley, if not the state. And we want to continue to grow that, make sure that we take care of citizens, and make sure that we have a heart and look out for all aspects of that. In a lot of ways, the business of the city, and it is a business, we have to treat it like a business, because we need to be able to drive revenue to be able to keep taxes low and services high. And we plan on, this year as an example, one of the things that we did is we're adding with this budget, adding 2 additional SROs. That's a huge factor. We started down that path last year by adding 4 school resource officers, or SLOs, I apologize. And our goal is to have 1 in every single school by the time that this council is finished. And the goal to do that is the only way to do that is to actually drive revenue. We have to continue to do that. This council is on a path to do that. The city is on a path to do that. We are just the vision of this. The city employees and the amazing city employees we have are the ones that actually execute that plan. So we thank you for all of your hard work, because I know how much time has been put into this. So with that, do I have a motion to pass 37R?
I'll motion.
Second.
Please vote. Councilmember Dunn and Councilmember Finn?
Aye. Aye.
And we have a 7-0. Thank you. It's only 9 o'clock. We have like 1 hour left, so we're good. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. So thank you for everybody's patience with everything we've had tonight. I know people are like, oh. With that, next on the agenda is call to the public. As a reminder, please, each speaker will direct his or her comments to the members of the governing body and not any individual member or other individuals present. Each speaker will refrain from personal attacks, foul or abusive language, and will maintain a civil and courteous manner and tone. Members of the audience will respect the rights of others and will not create noise or other disturbances that will disrupt the person speaking. As I said earlier, we will show common courtesy and respect to every person that speaks, whether you believe in what they're saying, like what they're saying, or not. So with that. Shannon Limo. Okay. I'm sorry? It does, I apologize. Trust me, my penmanship's worse than yours, I promise you.
Hello. I looked over the general plan amendments, and it's 149 pages. And all the language in it isn't exactly exact. And trying to read all of the little graphs, and if I don't understand all the language that's being used, because I am not immersed in government, it's very confusing. And the way it appears to me, it's not exactly clear. I have multiple issues with multiple things that are happening in the city. My biggest concern is the water usage from both the chip plants that are being built near my house. I am all the way in the back of 67th, Pyramid Peak Parkway, and we share a mountain with TSMC on the other side. Both the chip plant and the packaging plant have inherent issues with pollution, and I have concerns about the hazardous chemicals that they're used being discharged into our the water when it's filtered and gone back into the system for all of us to drink. And then compound that with the possibility of an airport, I have some concerns because those chemicals are contained underground with the possibilities of leaks and other things happening that happened in Silicon Valley. That's where my concern lies. I like my drinking water and I like to keep it clean, and I don't like the idea of using reused water, whether it be from a toilet or from a plant who has to clean the water to keep it in the plant, but then also has to have some water that discharges back into the sewer system. I don't know if that's something that people are aware of or not, but it is an issue. My other problem came in with the price of housing. They used to call up where we lived the Blue Ghetto because we had a lot of first responders that live where I live, and it was affordable at that time because the market had bottomed out. Now it's completely unaffordable, and now you're talking about adding on more our fees to a home that needs to be built in the area. And everybody we know, and my husband's also a police officer, they all want to live where we live, but no one can afford it. And we were lucky enough to buy when the market bottomed out. So that being said, I appreciate the fact that you guys are trying to get more police and fire, but if they can't afford to live where we are, what's the point? They're all going to have to travel up to where we're at. And if they can't afford it, then they can't afford it. I'm disappointed in my vote in a lot of ways, simply because I feel as if I was sold a bill of goods, but I didn't really necessarily understand it. I was just on the bandwagon and feeling America, and I wish I had looked into further what I was actually voting for. I feel like the desert is just going to be decimated, and that was the reason why we lived out there, and we didn't have a lot of traffic, we didn't have a lot of politics, we didn't have a lot of crime. And with all this growth, you can't avoid it. There's going to be taxes raised. And I know you guys say that it won't be raised, but it's inevitable. We have to somehow pay for all this stuff. The home builders aren't going to pay for all of it, so it's going to have to come somewhere down the line. I did see on your Instagram page, wait, hold on, just one quick question.
Ma'am.
On the Instagram page, or on your Instagram page, it states that there is a chance of property taxes increasing. I would just like to know on the record if that's correct.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Mr. Steve Coulter.
Mayor, council members. I just wanted to come this evening and make some comments on the airport. I'm a Trilogy resident in the Mesquite District. When I first heard of the potential air park, my first reaction was kind of exciting. I thought this could work out. Since then, I've been trying to learn more about it, and I enjoyed Rick's comments this evening about following the facts. I looked at the Scottsdale Airport area. I've flown corporately for a number of years in a company I worked with, and I could see the benefits and how it could really help economic growth. Since three of the pillars of this administration is crime, water development, and economic development, I think an air park can really help. I want to learn more about it and see how it can help in economic development, and I fully support the feasibility studies. It's not a vote right now, and it won't be for a few years, should we have the park or not. It's a vote of confidence that we should have feasibility studies and do the economic studies that people are concerned about and the impact of water that the park has. So I just wanted to let the council know and the mayor, I fully support the process you're taking and moving ahead with the feasibility studies and taking it one step at a time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Corinne Haynes. Mr. Paul Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Beck, Councilman and Councilwomen, the city, mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers. I'm here because I serve veterans. I would like folks to understand what honor, integrity, and commitment truly mean. Throughout our history, men and women have answered the call to serve. I served for various reasons, both on active duty and in the Fleet Reserve for 30 years. I'm a fourth-generation veteran. I'm a native of Arizona. I was raised in Yuma. I've seen the growth of this area many, many times. You can't believe a lot of things happen in 50 years. You know, one of the things that I grew up with, and I did have a prepared speech, but I'm going to kind of digress a little bit. I'm here to honor 3 council members that stood up for the wall that heals. I helped navigate that and get things done for the city. I was disappointed when I learned that the city did not promote it. Danette Dunn, Councilwoman Dunn, Councilman Brad Schaefer, and Councilman Bill Patina. I want to thank you for everything that you've done for that wall. And again, I'm disappointed in the city that they did not step up. The rest of the folks that we had to put together are American Legion Riders. And again, I'm here just as a veteran. I serve veterans. I was a state administrator. I was a teacher for 15 years after I retired. So right now I am retired. This is my job. I serve veterans. And I remind you of your oath. Mine never expired. My oath is still valid. I support and defend the Constitution. And that's what I remind everybody. You all took an oath for the office. And I thank you, Brad Schaefer, for your support, Councilman. And I thank you, Councilman Bill Patina, for your support. And if Councilwoman Dunn, I stand corrected, thank you very much for your support. That's all my remarks.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Mr. Larry Fraley. Mr. Larry Fraley.
Mayor Beck, council members, my name's Larry Fraley. I've lived in Peoria since 1977, and I moved here with my family and began work at a company called Intel Corporation, where I spent 20 years. And yes, I drove every day 20 miles, or 1 hour there and 1 hour back from Peoria to Intel. I come today to show and recognize my support for bringing high-tech industry to Peoria. I have seen it firsthand. I retired from Intel as an IT director worldwide. I was involved in bringing technology to Fairfax, Virginia, to Santa Clara, to Tokyo, and to Bangalore, India, where all of these cities were transformed with high-tech industry coming into their area and their cities. First and foremost, attracting high-tech companies like Amcor and other companies will elevate the economic landscape of Peoria. These firms bring with them substantial investments, job opportunities, increased tax revenues, and by establishing a strong presence in our city, these companies will only create an array of high-paying jobs, but will also attract a talented workforce, fostering a culture of innovation and growth. Moreover, the arrival of these high-tech firms will stimulate our economy, growth beyond the immediate job market. The ripple effect of these companies will be felt all across various sectors, including retail, hospitality, services, and local businesses will experience an increased demand, leading to further job creation and economic prosperity throughout our community. Furthermore, the presence of high-tech companies will enhance the educational ecosystem of Peoria. Collaborations between these firms and local education institutions will create opportunities for internships, for apprenticeships, for partnerships. Students will gain practical experience and access to cutting-edge technologies, bringing them for jobs of the future. The synergy between the industry and education will position Peoria as a hub for innovation, attracting top talent, fostering thriving knowledge and basic economy. In addition to the economic benefits, high-tech firms will prioritize sustainability and environmental stewardship. I believe we'll overcome any water issues. I believe we're smart enough to figure out how to deliver safe water. Lastly, the arrival of high-tech companies will elevate the overall quality life in Peoria. In conclusion, bringing these firms like Amcor to the outskirts of Peoria is an opportunity we cannot afford to miss. I've seen it firsthand transform the lives of the citizens of these cities that has done so.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Ms. Laura Page.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight, I'd like to address the concerns with pursuing the development of an airport. The feasibility study presented tonight didn't address any of the challenges. From a financially fiscal conservative perspective, I'm concerned about the burden the airport could impose on the taxpayer. Many city-owned and operated airports all over the country face funding shortfalls. They default to asking the state or federal government for help to do the improvements required to keep their FAA certification active. The FAA has infrastructure maintenance requirements that are non-negotiable. Many of these airports have never been able to operate in the black, no less pay for these FAA unfunded mandated improvements. The cities I have witnessed with these issues have faced tough choices. They need to qualify and secure federal grants, raise taxes, or close the airport operation, which includes letting their FAA certification lapse. This last option makes the airport inoperable. If the city can ever find the money to restart operations, the recertification process is lengthy and expensive. Taxpayers are usually not favorable to increasing their taxes for an airport that isn't profitable or operable. This has a ripple effect on the airport businesses that are located close by and dependent on the airport operations to do business. They now have to move to another location. The city loses the revenue from those businesses and could face increased costs of maintaining buildings without tenants, assuming the city develops and leases out the buildings at the airpark. In addition to the fiscal concerns, the quality of life issues are of paramount importance. Northwest Peoria has many residents with more planned for the future. Most people do not want to live close to an airport. Real estate professionals are required to disclose to potential buyers the airports in close proximity to the residents they are selling. Adhering to good governance protocols, it would be valuable to conclude public participation in the decision-making process on whether or not to move forward with a project of this magnitude. This includes, but isn't limited to, spending money on future feasibility studies and securing property for the same. I ask for your collective consideration to take a step back, pause, and reconsider next steps on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mayor. Mr. Kirk Reinhardt.
Mayor, council members, my name is Kirk Reinhardt. By way of introduction, I'd like to give you a little bit about my background. I'm a retired commercial airline pilot as well as a military pilot, so I would say I have a fairly good understanding about airports and airplanes. With respect to airports and airplanes, one of the questions from the council member earlier to the feasibility study was with respect to noise. The bottom line with airports is they're noisy. Airplanes are noisy, it's unavoidable. Now, I've heard some people speak of mitigation, but mitigation simply means you're going to attempt to reduce, but not eliminate, the noise. And the way you could go about doing that is constrained by a couple of things. One, if you build an airport, you have to put the runway in line with the prevailing wind. So effectively, at some point in time, all the aircraft have to enter the same arrival and departure corridors. Mitigation generally means that what we call SIDs and STARS. SID stands for Standard Instrument Departure, STAR, Standard Terminal Arrivals. Those are somewhat, can be convoluted routing to try to get airplanes to avoid noise-sensitive areas. The reality, though, is the type of airport that you're proposing is a general aviation airport, which means they're flying under Part 91 rules, which means they are not obligated, nor will they ever be obligated to use those SIDs, nor will they be obligated to use those standard terminal arrivals. Part 135 jets, private jets, don't necessarily have to use those arrivals. So all talks about mitigation, I'd like you to keep that in mind. Secondly, and finally, we know about the airspace being complicated. That complicates the ability for you to design a SID or a STAR to mitigate the noise and over noise issues. So I think you need to pay attention to that. And finally, I think you have to pay attention to the cost. We already heard an explanation that the cost of the land alone was going to be somewhere in the vicinity of $43 million. Now you have the cost to build it, and whether or not you get the FAA grant, the bottom line is it going to be profitable? And the bottom line right now is the Phoenix Aviation Authority, or department, I guess I should say, that operates Sky Harbor, Scottsdale, Sky Harbor, Goodyear, and Deer Valley. Sky Harbor subsidizes the cost of operating Goodyear and Deer Valley, which means they're not profitable. So the question I think for all of us is this a really good idea? And I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Mr. Michael Raminto. Apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, but I think I'm Ramoto?
It's Romito, but it's
Ramito.
close enough.
Thank you,
I've
sir.
been called a lot worse. Mr. Mayor and council members, appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I have two things I'd like to mention today. Earlier tonight, there was some discussion about the general plan and modifications to the general plan. As I understand it, the planning people would like to make any transaction on state land acquisition be classified as a minor change versus a major change. The difference there is that the major changes go to a vote of the council. the minor changes can simply be pushed through. And when we talk about 1,620 or 6,700 acres of acquisition, I don't view that as a minor change to this community. Second thing I would like to talk about is the Air Park situation. There appears to be a group calling themselves Peoria Ambassadors, Peoria Grassroots Ambassadors, and they've put forth the truth in the community about the proposed Peoria Air Park. Their first point was that the council has voted for 6 feasibility studies. I don't know that feasibility is the issue as much as need or necessity is the issue, and whether the people of Peoria want you to spend $500,000 on feasibility studies or $30 to $43 million on land acquisition. I'll add that I'm the president of the Blackstone Homeowners Association. A number of our residents have aircraft. I walk the neighborhood every day, and not one of our aircraft owners has expressed an interest in having another air park. Lastly, this isn't my first rodeo. I was the president of one of the largest maintenance, repair, and overhaul aircraft operators in the world, so I'm fairly familiar with what it takes to run an airport. A lot of these questions have not been answered yet, and I'm not sure that they're going to be answered in a feasibility study. One thing in my 35 years in aerospace is that I was always completely transparent and open with not only my customers, but also my employees. I hope that you will do the same with the voters of the city of Peoria. And lastly, I respect the work that the Kaufman Associates did, but I've never seen an expert witness not support what they were paid to support. And on that basis, I would like to suggest that whoever you hire, if you hire people for a feasibility study, is that they be objective with you and with the people of this community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Mr. Joe Klur.
Good afternoon, Joe Klur, a Estancia resident. All we really know about this airport right now from the first feasibility study, which is why you do feasibility studies, is it's projected to have $1 billion financial impact to the community with approximate $60 million revenue, i.e. tax generation for the city. The other thing we know from that feasibility study is that there's clearly a need for an additional municipal airport. When you have 500 people on a waiting list at Deer Valley waiting for a hangar, and the top guy's been on there for 5 years, clearly there's a desire and a need for it. We don't talk too much about the Scottsdale Airport. I don't think that they are having any problems, and obviously if you do it right, it can be a very positive thing for the community. Fact is, a lot of people don't want to see another shovel of dirt turned over here where they live or in their desert. When I moved here, I guarantee you the people were saying, we don't want anybody else out here. And the people that are yet to come, they're saying the same thing. I get it. But growth is inevitable. We're going to have growth. We're going to have the traffic. We're going to have all those things that come with growth. The important thing is that we do it smartly. And the way we do it smartly is through, again, generating revenue, which is another word for tax. And the only way you do that is to have strong economic development so that taxes are produced, so that we can have parks and police and fire and all the things that we want and desire. You all took an oath to be on this dais to do what's not just best for your district, but what's best for the city as a whole. You're going to have this conflict because change creates conflict. The other thing that I'd like to say is, with regards to, I lost my train of thought, I apologize. What's really going on, in my opinion, as much about the airport and all the other things is, you may not be aware of this, but there's an election coming up, And a lot of this is driven toward the election. We're trying to find a wedge issue. We're trying to find distinction between candidates. That's what a lot of this noise is. It'll sort itself out come July 30th, November 8th, and all of this will probably go away. But do the feasibility studies. Let's really operate from the position of facts and not emotion and what we think we want or don't want. And I trust we'll all survive. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Report from the city manager.
Mayor, I had a lengthy report to provide, but in the interest of time, I'm going to cut it to one video to hopefully end us on a positive note.
Report from Youth Liaison.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So I would like to take this time to show my appreciation to Council for giving this opportunity as Youth Council liaisons to help represent the youth in our city. This opportunity has been very unique and allowed us to learn more about our city and enhance our engagement with our community. So once again, I would like to express our gratitude towards the mayor, council, and overall the city of Peoria. Thank you.
Just going off of what Anna said, this was a great opportunity, and I would like to thank you all. It's been a wonderful experience, and I know that next year the Youth Council liaison positions will be in great hands. Thank you.
Thank you. We will, the mayor's report. Do you have a video to play? Go ahead. Pause this for 1 second. So the reason that we're bringing this up is because, and I wish that some of the people would have stayed for this. Of course, we've been doing this we've been in here for 6 hours now. So I apologize for that. But I think this is part of the important aspect of this. So there's been a lot of misguided information or misinformation that's actually been shared into the public for a lot of different reasons. I do not expect everybody to agree with me. I do not expect everybody to agree with me personally on this dais. Each one of us represent, as council members up here, we represent 32,000 to 36,000 people. But every single time we vote, and I'm going to give you just a glimpse, and you should turn that volume up a little bit. Here's 3 examples, and this is anybody that's actually been to this meeting previously. This is a common occurrence, whether we have a 7-0, or whether we have a 4-3, or whether we have a 5-2, or whatever it is. So if you could please play this for a second. We may disagree on different things. I would say that if you saw us beforehand, and if you see us when we're taking photos or we're seeing, we all laugh and we all get along with it. And the reason why is because just because we might have a disagreement about one issue does not necessarily mean that this council is in disagreement, right? And it's okay for a 6-1 vote or a 4-3 vote or something like that. Our job up here as council members and mayor is to actually respect each other, show grace towards each other, and also look at what our other issues is and be able to have those conversations both for us, but more importantly for the citizenry, because we should be putting citizens first throughout this process. We don't always get along with everybody here on council, clearly. We don't always get along with our citizenry on a day-to-day basis, whether we're driving our cars or whatever it is. But surely we can actually hope and pray for other people around the world. So thank you. And with that, being no further business, we will adjourn. Our job should be try to show grace towards each other, but also take care of our neighbors. That does not mean, I'm going to repeat this, and I've said this a lot of times, people have heard this over and over again, that does not mean that any full life is a straight line. It does not mean that any city is a straight line. You've heard tonight some of the topics on how previous city planning and funding around different topics have been put in when it comes to fees and things like that when we're in the study session. Our goal is to create a level of fairness, equitability, and making sure that taxpayers get their money's worth, but we're also making sure that the entire city flourishes. Thank you. So with that, I'm going to make a little statement here real quick. So I want everybody to understand this, and I would hope that those of you that are on social media would share this as much as you share everything else. We have, as council members on this dais, a moral imperative to take care of all citizens in the city of Peoria. Not just a few, all citizens in the city of Peoria. That is our job. That is what we are elected to do. We serve the citizens in every single area, whether they are an R or a D or an independent, or if they could care less about political party. It doesn't matter. We all have disagreements up here as individuals, and that's okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The problem that I see in life, and I'm going to say this, I would say this to my own kids, who I have 6 of, and Austin, don't let me forget to say what I'm supposed to say at the end of this, right? There he is. Because I have a very important announcement for everybody at the end of this. Social media has changed the way that people communicate and treat each other. I don't look at people as citizens, I look at them as my neighbors. I would not throw a trash bag of trash over my wall to be able to have the neighbor next door pick it up, and I wouldn't treat them like garbage. I would say the same thing goes across the board when it comes to social media. You may not agree with the direction I am going or the direction that other council members up here go, and every single council member, we can have discussions and have disagreements throughout that process. But when we so easily go on social media, and I would say the same thing to my children as I would say it to anybody else that's in this room or watching this or that was in here earlier. When we treat each other like garbage and we so easily make disregarding comments about who they are as individuals or what their motivation is or what they spend their money on or who they support. At the end of this election period that's actually going to happen here soon, you have to remember that everybody is still neighbors, and you're still going to have to actually meet each other at Fry's and see each other in the line. And if you treat each other like garbage, or you treat your other council members or neighbors like garbage, at some point in time, it's going to come back all around. So I would suggest that you think about when I hear that people think that certain people have motivations to everything from the making money or that we're supposed to do all these other things, you really need to think about the person. And if anybody has a question for me personally, they can more than welcome, they can call my chief of staff. I'll have coffee with anybody. More than willing to go down that path. But if you seriously think that this is a motivation of somebody trying to make money when it comes to the airport, you may not support it, and that's okay. There's a lot of people in here tonight that didn't support it. But I was elected, me personally, 2 years before I was elected, I talked about this specific plan. It was very well known, and I won overwhelmingly for a reason, because people want change. That may not be the people in this room, and that's okay. I don't have to treat you like garbage because I disagree with you. I respect your opinions, just like everybody else, I do with everybody else up here. I don't have to agree with every single thing that somebody else says. What I would remind you is when you go on social media, or you realize that your neighbor disagrees with you, maybe not punish them for having a different idea. Ideas are what built this country, and ideas are what's going to build this city. So we have to have those type of values for each other as individuals and try to share our city with each other at the same time. So with that, I appreciate everybody's time. It's literally been 6 hours, 15 minutes. My final announcement is this. I have a 16-year-old son named Asher Beck as of today. He drives an '89 blue Land Cruiser. I have tried my hardest to teach him how to drive. So just know that he's out there as of today. So Asher, if you're watching this, and I hope you are, happy birthday. So with that, we will adjourn. Thank you.
You are the